you know goldenrod makes an excellent tea?
Happy birthday to me. Happy birthday, dear Aaron.
Me.
You are a sad, strange little man, and you have my pity.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Tomic's veteran of the comic book industry for 30 years. I'm a writer, I'm an artist, and this sucks.
Tonight's episode, Fatal Witness.
Don't start! We haven't left yet!
Let's go! Let's go indeed. Welcome everybody. It's Aaron live. As you can see, I am tangled up with some cords below the table, but as you can see, I'm flying solo today. I know that's probably going to disappoint many of you, but Shelley's having some back trouble, so she is kind of laid up right now, and so it's just me and you. I do want to point out, though, that it was my mother's 92nd birthday on August 30th, and we had an enormous like 7-layer chocolate cake. That's why I'm wearing black, because it's slimming. But at 92 now, she is still like bugging me, going, one of those books coming in, I got to get to work. And I'm just like, okay, so I've been bringing in backing boards and bags for her to like get the boards in the bags and things like that. And so yes, I'm exploiting my 92-year-old mother for cheap labor, actually free labor. But hey, I let her live here, so that's the least she can do, I think. Anyway, no, she's I want you guys to know that when you get those books, it was Aaron's dear old mother who put them in there. Anyway, thank you for joining us. This is it's not our 100th episode, but it is the 100th episode of us featuring the Wrightson image of the day. And I promised you guys that when we got to that 100th day, which is this one, this episode, that we would do a special Wrightson episode. And I know you're all speculating, who's his guest? Who's that? Nobody. You guys know by now I am too freaking lazy to like try and book somebody on the show. But in truth, I've been coloring literally 16 hours a day. Get up in the morning and at night to get the book finished. So I haven't really hadn't had much time to do huge planning for this, although I did spend probably about 3 hours last night prepping for the show. So I did put a little effort into it, because after all, it is the 100th episode of the Wrightson of the Day image. And we're going to take a look at a lot of Wrightson images today, some Wrightson books, some Wrightson portfolios, some Wrightson this, some Wrightson that. It's going to be all about the great Berni Wrightson. And but first, let's see who has chosen to come along for this ride today. Now, Mark Pengren is showing up first here, but I know he wasn't first. There was a bunch of people that were like, I posted this like this. I set the show up last night around, I don't know, 12:30 at night or something. And I know there was several people in here, but Mark's going to get credit because I can't see anybody. It's weird how you post stuff in the chat and then it like drops out if you post too early. Very strange. He says, it isn't every episode of Aaron Live a Wrightson tribute episode, though. He says, isn't every episode. It is to a certain degree, but this is going to be all Wrightson all the time. In fact, there's going to be so much Wrightson today that I may have to reformat the show after this and like change the artist that I'm going to feature. Like I started doing, if you guys remember, I did for a while like my favorite Frazetta pieces. And I did that for, I don't know, maybe 10 shows. And then I was like, moved on. So maybe I'll flip to Frazetta and do like Frazetta image of the day until we do 100 images of Frazetta or something. I don't know. It could all change in a moment's notice, just like that. But thank you, Mark, for joining us. Jasu is here. Mark Killigrew is here. Now, Marcus Killigrew, sadly, he says, I watched that Nebraska game. Sorry, Aaron. Jeff Sims played like that for 3 years at Georgia Tech. When you're a turnover machine, that's something you don't get cured of. That's so I don't know. I guess we're just going to run him a lot and have him throw very little. We shall see how that goes this year. But it's the first year of the rebuild, so I had high expectations. After they choked away the Minnesota game, my expectations now have been significantly lowered. So I won't be pissed the entire year if things don't go right. But anyway, enough of that. Toshiro is saying, was there a Wrightson Wraith caught on camera for cryptids? Maybe. Bretsky the Great, salute chat, salute Shelley and Aaron. Again, it's just me, but thank you for the salutations. Joseph Dredd is here. Stippling Vaughn says he's going to have Jim Starlin on. Yeah, actually, I don't even know Jim Starlin. I'll tell you what, if Walter Simonson, as he occasionally does, shows up in the chat, if he shows up, I'll ask him if he wants to come on and share some Wrightson stories and send him a link. But other than that, it's just going to be me sharing tragic Wrightson stories about how he forgot me. Quoth the Raven is Louis Bright Raven is cooking dinner. He's going to be late. That's okay. We'll still be here. H is for Heretic. Says Sumerian September. Conan September is basically what he's saying. I'm on board with that. I love Conan. Henry Jeremick is here all the way from Oregon. Citizen Ronan is here. Henry Jeremick says the Wrightson thumbnail that Aaron used for this stream is incredible. All the test tubes, flasks, etc. One of my favorite Wrightson images. We'll be taking a closer look at that later in the show. I have seen the original, and it's impressive. Geek Avenger is here, of course. Toshiro is here. I already said Toshiro, sorry. Levi Skeen is here. Squeaky, she's usually here when Geek Avenger is here. Not making any connection between the two. But there is. Geek Avengers says, now this is interesting, solved a major plumbing problem that was causing both a tub and sink to back up with water. Almost hurt myself patting myself on the back. You know, that's one thing when my dad passed away, I took the responsibility on myself to fixing things. I'm not a big handyman. I don't, I mean, I can do stuff. I just don't like to do it. My dad was always, you know, you'd call him up and go, Dad, you know, I got this sink I got to fix. What do you recommend for it? And he'd talk to you for a few minutes. He'd go, I'll be over in 5 minutes. And he'd come over and fix the sink. So it was a great little system I had worked out. So I guess the moral of the story is Aaron takes advantage of his parents as much as possible. Let's see. Paul Brillard is here. Happy Sunday. Now, Paul, of course, is our resident engineer. Thanks for joining us, Paul. Leg Kick is here because Leg Kick, of course, is almost always here. Pastmaster Dan is here. He has shared the link to the show. Thank you, Pastmaster. Appreciate it. Brian Norton, all the way from Japan. Best part of my Monday. Hail to the little Presties. I guess he's a day ahead of us. Hope your mom had a nice birthday last week. She did. This is a sweet story. She said, I said, Mom, what do you want for your birthday? You know, what do you get? Some of this 92, right? She said, just take me to get a haircut. I went, I can do that. So I took her to get a haircut. She was very happy with it. And so she has her new haircut, and then went to the Cheesecake Factory and picked up massive. They have these 7-layer chocolate. Oh my gosh, it's just amazing. So I picked up one of those, and we had that for her birthday, and that's about it. I mean, my mom was never big on birthdays and stuff like that when I was a kid. In fact, I think I only had one birthday party when I was a kid growing up. I know it's sad and tragic, isn't it? But it was just, you know, we just never really emphasized that kind of thing. Christmas was always big, but, you know, birthdays were never a huge deal. So my mom doesn't like to make a big deal out of them. And then, so we don't. And then as we get older, Shelley and I are kind of like, let's just forget this whole birthday thing. So let's see here. Madness Comic Network is here. Joseph Dredd, of course, is here. JGA is here. Let's see. Grey Wolf Graphics. That's WD Smith is here. Let's go here. I'm back on the. Marcus Killicrew says I'm back and the dishes are done. Excellent. Wow, my mom hit 85 on August 25th. She has no quit in her. That's great. Love to hear that. moms have a way of living like so much longer than our dads. It's very strange. I guess you'd think that, well, I don't know, maybe men just like internalize stress so much more that it just kills us at an earlier age. I don't know. Kevin Thomas is here. Holy Hand Grenades is here. Thou shalt not count to 5. Geek Avenger for $10. Thank you so much, Geek. Use the super chat for chocolate for your mama and tell her happy birthday, Mama Lopresti. I will do that after I pocket the $10. No, I will. Thank you very much. I'll let her know someone sent $10 for birthday candy for her. Marcus Wiley Draws is here. Special guest Graham Ingles. Oh, I should have done that. That's pretty clever. I like that. Citizen Ronan, am I going to be bored? I don't know. You're boring me already. And the best way to liven up a show I've heard when it's boring is so that's for Citizen Ronan right there, giving me crap already. Yeah, they should have been guests, but you know. Brian Rubenacker's here. Bill Glasby is here. Let's see. Wrightson dinosaur portfolio. Dude, he didn't have a dinosaur portfolio, you nut. He did some posters though. Let's see. Joseph Dredd saying Nebraska 0-2. I'd blow you up for saying that, except how can I disagree with the truth? Robert Doan is here. You know, he always fixes your back pain with his Doan pills. Quit my life insurance job this weekend and converted my office back into a studio. Look at that. Robert Doan making the bold move. Like it. Jabez is here. Let's see. John Smith is here from my friend in San Diego, big with the San Diego Comic-Con, is joining us. He's not in San Diego. He's outside of San Diego, but, you know, in that area. Justin Side is here. Paul Rillard showing Neil Adams, Michael Golden, Mike Zeck image of the day. Those were a lot of good suggestions right there. Ruby Jade 90 is here. Shadowhawk Talks is here. Mike Wilson Art is here. Christina Lynn. Christina, did you get the file I just sent you? She's proofing. Christina Lynn is proofing all the Wraith of God stories and stuff. So if you want spoilers, you can contact Christina because she's actually read everything now, except the Kit Carter stuff, which she'll be getting probably on Tuesday to proofread. Okay, let's see. Nomadaman, Jeremy Burtz, Danky Frankie. Where's the headliner? Of course, he's referring to Shelley. Shelley's laid up with some back pain today, so she is out of commission. Should do Comics Jeopardy with Lopez and Fraga. James Murphy. Yo, you finished coloring, Aaron. I have less than half a page to go. And as soon as I finish the show, I will be finishing it up. I will not go to bed until that last page of Kit Carter is colored. And then those will go to the to my letterer, Warren Montgomery. He will finish lettering them. They will then go to Christina Lynn, who is my proofreader. And when she gets okay, they will then go to Kurt, who is my designer, who's putting the book together. So it all works just like that. She's smiling, so she must have got it. Everybody's giving me the pats on the back and telling me how sad they are about my quarterback situation at Nebraska. When are we going to get another Bros movie night? That's a good question. It's really hard because there's so few movies we can actually watch that won't get us shut down on our good friends at YouTube. I guess it was The Terror of Tiny Town was the last one we watched, wasn't it? The all midget Western. That was tremendous. So anyway, okay, so here we go. Before we get too deep into this, let's take a moment to do this public service announcement. There it is. Nothing like Frankenstein on a Berni Wrightson day. You guys, if you are new to this whole experience, this whole Aaron Live experience, please hit the like and subscribe, and it helps the channel grow. And when this channel grows, that means I can provide you with more ridiculous content like I do every week. And I'll be warning you guys, this is a fair warning. Once the book is done, which will be this week, I'm going to go back to doing more live streams and drawing streams, which I've been avoiding because I can't show you guys me drawing pages from Wraith of God because there'll be spoilers. And so all the stuff I'm working on, I can't like do live streams of that because I don't want to ruin the book for you. So, and then I don't have time right now to be drawing anything else because I'm getting this stuff done and put together and blah, blah, blah. So anyway, there you go. But you know what? We need a little energy to get the show rolling. And so let's do this.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Dove chocolate, stolen from my 92-year-old mother's room. It's like taking candy from a baby. My daughter is back at school. I got to get off sugar. I get back to that like protein diet and start getting down to another. So I get down to 190, feeling good. And then I just go nuts. And then I'm back up to 200. So now I got to get back to 190 again. I mean, it's not grotesquely overweight or anything like that, but I got to get fit, man. I'm getting old. I got to be fit. Christina Lynn says, yeah, I got the nightclub file. Excellent. That's good to hear. Aaron, do you know Len Wein? I only have one Len Wein story. And now that was actually part of my, of another story. But I've never met him. So I don't, unfortunately, because I heard he was a really cool guy from the people that did know him. My dentist is so freaking expensive that I am changing dentists. Okay, now you got me started. You go into the dentist, right? Now, the older you get, for most people, your teeth get stronger. Okay, it's only like when you're young that you end up getting cavities for the most part. But the enamel on your teeth gets stronger as you get older. Now that may change when you get to a certain age and things start going haywire. But so your likelihood of getting a cavity if you take care of your teeth is very slim. But my dentist insists on taking x-rays every time I go in. And I'm like, I'm not taking x-rays because in all the years I've been going to the dentist and gotten x-rays since I've been an adult, they've never found anything. Okay. So I'm like, why can't you just take x-rays? If like say my tooth's bothering me, let's get an x-ray and see if there's something going on in there. Or the dentist looks at your teeth and goes, I don't like the way this one looks. We better get an x-ray, see if there's anything going on there. I'm okay with that. But then forcing you to get x-rays and forcing you to pay for it when they're unnecessary drives me freaking nuts. And so, yeah, I'm switching dentists because they're like super expensive. And then they force me to do stuff I don't want to do and I feel is unnecessary to do. So there you go. But I do have a missing tooth in the back because I had a root canal that didn't take. So they ended up having to remove the tooth. And so then they give you like retainers. They don't give you. I had to get retainers, plastic, retainers, mouth guard retainers for the tops and bottoms of my teeth and to keep the teeth in place, right? Because they're more likely to move because you have that gap in there. And my dog chewed them up. That son of a... I left him on my nightstand, my fault, climbed up on the bed, got him, chewed the crap out of him. So now I got to get new ones of those too. And I have no dental insurance. So that's the thing that really ticks me off. Just Kevin Ryan says, Aaron's dentist is so expensive he decided to insert chiclets instead of crowns. Exactly. Oh, man, I tell you. Jake Blues said, I heard Dr. Vinny Boombots was good. Of course, that is Rodney Dangerfield's doctor, or was. Rodney's no longer with us. Steve Laurie says, the best dentist is a wrench. Oh. Uh-oh, Citizen Ronan here. The big dentist scam is the deep cleaning. Okay. New Wraith of God villain, the Death Inst. Oh, Well, okay, that's why you get a mouth guard while you're sleeping, right? My wife grinds her teeth so hard when she's sleeping that she cracked a tooth. A lot of people do that. Yeah, he must think you have insurance. No, they know I don't now because they going in there going, I don't have insurance. But it's like it keeps flipping. I think it's like when we started going to this dentist office, I think there's 4 different owners that have, so it's not even like the same place anymore. So, oh, excuse me. That was that chocolate. That's kind of embarrassing there. But anyway, so I shouldn't feel guilty like switching dentists, right? So I'm not going to. Do you like horror comics in black and white or color? Usually black and white, depends on who's drawing it though. If it's someone with a very open style, I think the color is helpful. If it's somebody super detailed, then I'm going to go with the black and white, and we'll get to that in a moment. Okay, we've been talking about teeth for long enough. Let's get to the healthy, the good, the fun, the portion of our show you've all been waiting for, our Wrightson tribute. Now, those of you who've been with me for a few years on this channel know that I have a few Wrightson stories, and none of them end well. Because I met him like 5 times, he never remembered me. I've had dinner with him, sat next to him at a con, talked extensively at different shows, and then would see him the next show and he had no clue who I am. So it was tragic for me, but to have my hero never remember me. But I did get to meet him several times and ask him a lot of questions about different things, and so that was always fun. Now, as you guys know, for me, the sweet spot for Berni Wrightson was between 1972 and 1980. And I know a lot of you are fans of his later stuff, and because you weren't around back then. But I kind of look at it sort of like you would a professional athlete, right? At the tail end of their career, they're not going to be as good as they were, right, whenever they were at their peak, right? And I think that's true of artists too. I think you have that spot where you're doing really, really phenomenal stuff, or the best work of your career, and then maybe you get tired, or maybe whatever, you lose interest, or there's a variety of things that could happen. But we'll get to that as well. So the first thing I want to show you guys is, in case you're interested and you want to know, okay, Aaron, where did Wrightson get his start? What was his, now other than, he's from Baltimore, and other than doing newspaper work for the Baltimore Sun, which he did, his first comic book work was in this fine publication right here. This is House of Mystery, number 179. It has 3 pages of Wrightson art in it, and that's a great Neil Adams cover, by the way. A lot of these older House of Mysteries that Wrightson got his start in and did a lot of work in have great Neil Adams covers. So it's kind of like a double whammy. You get some early Wrightson, but then you also get great Neil Adams on the cover, and a lot of times Neil Adams would do something on the inside as well. So a lot of good stuff there. But there you go. That's all the way back in I want to say it's 1967. I guess I should have looked that up, but I bet Marcus Killigrew knows off the top of his head. But I'm guessing that I have this book, but I don't have it slabbed, so I don't have the date off the top of my head. But there it is. I'm going to say 1967, maybe 68, but I'm going to say 67, 68 for that. And that is that's our first Berni Wrightson professional work right there. Although he did have a piece of art published in the letters column in the Creepy magazine when he was 16, but I'm not counting that. 69? Are you sure? Are you guessing? Are you sure? That's exactly right, Aaron, who Berni Wrightson. Okay. So that's just kind of a little footnote for those guys who, if you're a completist like I am, and there was one time in my life when I was like 18 years old. By the time I was 18, I had everything Wrightson had done up to that point. I mean, everything. I got rid of my Wrightson collection because I was using it as a crutch too much artistically. But then, like a dummy, I got rid of all of it. Then I started rebuying it at more expensive prices, 20 years later. But anyway, so I don't have everything Wrightson ever did back like I used to, but I still have some of the highlights. Unfortunately, I do not have this. I used to have this, but I don't have it anymore. Now it's too freaking expensive. But this, of course, is House of Secrets number 92, where we have the first appearance of Swamp Thing. And this is 1971. Okay. And just for reference, if you guys remember, I had Walter and Wheezy Simonson on my show during one of my Aaron cons back during the COVID years and interviewed them. We talked all this stuff. And Wheezy actually was the model for this girl brushing her hair. So that's kind of fun. But this, of course, is Len Wein and Berni Wrightson's Swamp Thing. This is the first appearance of Swamp Thing, the first official Swamp Thing story. This is 1971. Okay, so we got Wrightson doing the cover. And if you have the issue or you get a reprint of it, and there's tons of the Swamp Thing reprints out there, he's really hasn't defined the look of the character. He's still sort of he's more of a glob or a mass, and becomes more of a character, a physical being, when they finally launched the series in 1972. Now this is interesting, and I do have this in a 9.4, by the way, I'm just saying. This is significant. This is House of Mystery 195. And it's a king size issue. That's why it's 25 cents. This came out the same year as the House of Secrets 92. But this is the interesting thing. Now, this story might have been drawn before they released it. That I don't know. But this has a Swamp Thing-esque story in it. Okay? But it's not Swamp Thing, but it is a Swamp Thing-like character. Okay, so that's why this becomes a significant issue. And the interesting thing is, this story is came out, this issue came out after House of Secrets 92. So it's kind of like, why would they go backwards and do just a swamp creature story after they'd already established Swamp Thing? That makes me believe that the story in this comic was actually drawn much earlier and just never used until after House of Secrets 92. But it came out in the same year in 1971. So this does have a nice Wrightson cover on it. See it, 1971 right there. And it does have this Swamp Thing-esque story in it. Kevin Wolf says, inventory. DC used to do that a lot. In fact, they would just say, draw me a cover, and they put the cover in the drawer, and then 2 years later, they'd go, oh yeah, we got this cover, you can give it to a writer and go write a story around this cover. There's some Batman covers that Wrightson did. That's exactly how they did it. John Durham said, I would buy it just for the girl on the cover, but my mom would throw it away. I never bought, I don't know, I didn't start thinking about girls seriously till I was about 14 or 15. So when I was like 10 or 11, I was just buying whatever I thought was cool. I never collected many comics since I wasn't allowed to, Grey Wolf Graphics, of course, but I did have the history of the Second World War mags and a 6-volume binder set that I lost to water damage. It took me years to replace it. Ew, it sucks. Sucks. Are you talking about comic book or are you talking about art? Clarify that and I'll answer it. Okay, so now we jump ahead to 1972. Now, Wrightson has been doing stuff in House of Mystery and things like that. Pinups here, a story here and there. We're not going to go through that entire history of what he did in House of Mystery and House of Secrets. But they decided to launch DC, that is, Swamp Thing book in 1972. And this is, to me, where Wrightson was really finally started figuring out stylistically what he wanted to do. And was doing some really cool stuff. This is a great close-up splash page. This occurs right after Dr. Alec Holland, the bad guys blow up his barn where he's doing experiments in vegetation and growth, plant growth and things like that. Falls into the swamp. Chemicals mix with his body and blah, he becomes Swamp Thing, and he comes out of the water, and then we get this big close-up. which is really interesting because the page before there's a picture of Swamp Thing standing or coming out of the water, but this is the first big shot we get of him, which is kind of cool to go close up. And then on the next page, I believe there's a full standing shot of him. I'd have to go back and look. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure that's the case there. But this is all brush. Wrightson was a brush inker for the most part until he flipped and became a pen inker with Frankenstein stuff and some of his later stuff after this. And we'll talk about that a little bit too as we move along. I love this. My dog's howling at the moon and the moon's not even out yet. The classic Swamp Thing before Alan Moore ruined him. Wow. You know, everybody used to love Alan Moore. Now everybody can't stand him. Another guy I've never met. So, but I did like Watchmen, although I thought the ending, I have a real problem with the ending of Watchmen. And then I thought The Killing Joke was good. And I know there's people that say they don't like The Killing Joke, but I thought it was pretty good. And maybe it was just because Bolin drew it. So, anyway, check. Okay, I'm going to go take a shotgun and take care of my dog. Of course, I'm joking. I would never do that to my lovely little dog. I'm just going to close my door so we can't hear him bark quite as loudly. Why are there delivery guys on Sunday? I mean, don't get me off on a tangent, but can we have a day off? I mean, I guess if you don't have a dog barking at everything, then you probably don't care if someone delivers something at your house on Sunday. But when my dog barks, I'm like, just one day when I'm streaming, let the dog not bark. Okay, now check this out. This is also from Swamp Thing #1. I take it back because the story starts where he's already Swamp Thing and then it flashes back. That's something I like to do when writing, is I like to start in the midst of something, right? Because I find that origin issues where you start from scratch and build all the way up to reveal the hero or the whatever monster, it can be pretty slow reading. So if you start a story already at the beginning and then flash back, it's like starting a movie, you know, with an action sequence before you get to the boring stuff, before you get back to another action sequence. And this is kind of what they did here. So you have Swamp Thing looking at the barn, his wife is in there, as I recall, working on trying to do the work that he was killed doing by the mob or whatever. And so he's trying to protect her, and she ends up getting killed. And I think that's when he flashes back to his origin. But it does start like this, which I think is a great thing to do, right? You get your first issue, Swamp Thing, never seen him before, except maybe in, you know, if you bought House of Secrets 92, but maybe a lot of people didn't. They see the Swamp Thing comic and then they're like, okay. So you open up and this is what you get. I think that's a great way to start, and that's a great splash page there. Okay, now check this out. This is the splash page to issue #2 of Swamp Thing. Look at the detail and man, people weren't really doing this at that time. You know, maybe Barry Smith on Conan a little bit. Because actually, well, Conan came out in 1970. So Barry Smith would have been probably right near the tail end of his Conan run when Wrightson was launching Swamp Thing. So, right, you know, Barry Smith was doing some killer stuff at the end of his Conan run. And then now you got Wrightson doing this. I mean, this is the splash page of the second issue. I mean, are you kidding me? Ellie Munoz says Moore's current Cthulhu stuff is as deranged as it gets. Oh, it's probably too true. Thank you, Frankie says, I like The Killing Joke. Alan Moore's a woke writer, in my opinion, but he is a good writer. I would agree with that. John Durham explaining my delivery, saying the post office promised Amazon they would deliver everything in 3 days, no questions asked. Well, there you go. We're still talking about Alan Moore in here. Wrightson was great at using shadows and spotting blacks. Absolutely was. And the guy I think that kind of taken over that mantle that really does it well is David Finch currently. Big Finch fan. Because the one thing you do by good use of blacks is create volume. And that's what we want as artists, right? You have a two-dimensional surface. You want that to feel three-dimensional. You want to give it depth. You want to give the characters weight that you could almost, grab them and squeeze them. I want to squeeze my Swamp Thing. But anyway, that's one way to do it, is to place blacks in the right place, and it gives you that sense of volume, which I really, really like. Twirlyworth says, was Wrightson classically trained, and do you know, was there an artist who influenced his style? He was self-taught for the most part. I mean, I think a lot of, I want to say he took like one of those home courses you used to be able to get back in the day, like John Nagy and guys like that. But he did not go to school for art. And his influences were the EC comics, like Graham Ingels especially, Frazetta, hugely. Early on, you can see his early work is very Frazetta-like, and then he kind of transitioned and became sort of Wrightson-y Frazetta, then it became Wrightson. But then also the Graham Ingels. You can see that in his people, in his faces, like when everybody has an open mouth and the saliva hanging off the teeth. That's very Graham Ingels. So if you look at some of the EC work of Graham Ingels, you can see how he influenced Wrightson. And I'm sure there's a bunch of other guys in there, but those are the two most obvious ones, I think. Okay, now the interesting thing about his Swamp Thing run, and we'll wrap it up right here on the Swamp Thing stuff, is when he got to issue 10, and I remember reading this and I thought this is really interesting, that he said he felt like he was getting too comfortable with the brush. It was like just second nature. He wasn't even thinking anymore. It was just coming out. And he said, so he took the 10th issue of Swamp Thing, this one right here, and he inked it all with a pen, okay, to challenge himself, right? And this is a guy, this was probably what, this was an every other month book. So this was probably late 73, maybe 74 by the time he finished his first, this first 10 issues. So he was born in 1948. So that would have made him what, 26 years old, 25, 26 years old. And he's just like, oh, this brush is becoming too easy. I got to challenge myself and, use a pen. And of course, this is just a great looking book. Probably my favorite issue. I mean, it was his last issue. But you can see all the pen work, in here. Sort of giving us a little bit of a look to the future of what Frankenstein might end up eventually being. But yeah, just to, just to challenge yourself, it's just nutty, but great. I mean, that's how you get greatness, right? Is you got people that they're never satisfied. They always are challenging themselves. And that's what we all try to do as artists, or we should be trying to do. Now, there was a thing for a couple of years there called ACBA, the Academy of Comic Book Arts and Academy of Comic Book Arts. Yeah, ACBA, Academy of Comic Book Arts. That Neil Adams started, and they were having banquets, and they would give out awards for best artist, best comic. It was kind of an industry award started by the industry professionals. It didn't last long, only a couple of years, but Barry Smith won best artist for Conan, probably in 71. And then in 72, Wrightson won it for Swamp Thing. And actually after those two, I'm not sure. I think Simonson got something for Manhunter, but that might have been kind of at the tail end of that. So these guys were recognized as doing really, really superior work at that time. In fact, the early 70s, I've talked about this before, especially when I did the portfolio show and things like that, it was really kind of a renaissance period in comics where you had all these guys, Kaluta, Jeff Jones a little bit. He didn't really work that much in comics, but mostly doing book covers and things. But Neil Adams, the guys that were really kind of coming into their own in the 70s, where illustration took such a big part or played such a big part in these guys' style, where, you know, Kirby and Buscema were doing one thing in the 60s, you know, and people like Kurt Swan over at DC and Murphy Anderson, guys like that. But then these guys came along with this highly illustrative style, and it just became something totally different. And it worked out great because horror and fantasy were making their appearance in comics, because superhero comics sales had really fallen off in the early 70s. After this great boom in the Silver Age, it's the cycle, right? So comics were dying, and so they thought, well, let's bring in horror, you know, karate comics, fantasy comics, something to kind of jumpstart the medium. And it was perfect for these guys with this really illustrative style, to do something other than superhero work. Can anybody see my messages? Are they coming through? They are indeed. There it is, right there. John Nagy. I brought him up, but he was influenced by an old Saturday morning TV show called Draw with John Nagy, where the guy drew live in the new lesson for. I actually was too. I sent away for John Nagy's. I was so pretentious as a little kid. I got John Nagy's whole drawing system, right? They'd send you these different books, and they were numbered in which order you were supposed to do them in. And I would look through them and I'd say, well, this looks harder than that. So I changed the numbers on them and put them in the order I wanted to do them, which is so stupid. But there you go. Dumb kids, right? So anyway, here you got this guy. He's off of he's off of Swamp Thing. He was going to take over and do the Shadow, and that didn't work out. I can't remember the details, but I have shown the ad piece that he did, which is tremendous for the Shadow. And then so Kaluta ended up doing it. Wrightson inked a few pages in a few of the issues. Might have penciled and inked a couple pages in there to help Kaluta out on some deadlines, but that job ended up going to Mike Kaluta. And so then Wrightson ends up doing what I think is his best comic work for Warren Magazine. That's Creepy and Eerie Magazine, right? And the first job he did for Warren magazines was this one right here. Okay. And this is the famous or infamous, however you want to look at it. Infamous because it's so brutal, but famous because it's so great, is his adaptation of The Black Cat. I believe Bruce Jones wrote the story, Wrightson illustrated it in black and white. Now, let me, if I may, this is Creepy number 62. This would have been about 1974. Let's take a look at the first page. Now, this is only partially, I hate it when they do this. People post like part of a page instead of the whole thing online, but that's just a great illustration. But there was a long panel at underneath this image on the bottom of the page that kind of set up the man and the wife that live in this house, right? But look at that. Now, he was getting paid more than he was at DC for doing this. So, you know, and these guys that worked at Warren were kind of like, they had something to prove, you know, and they showed it by the level of work that they did. Let me read something to you, if I may. This is a book we'll take a closer look at in a little bit, but Dark Horse put out this book on all of Wrightson's work in Creepy and Eerie magazine. And Bruce Jones, who is a writer, terrific writer, and a good artist too, but a terrific writer, wrote a lot of Wrightson's stuff at Warren. He wrote the foreword for this. And so I'm going to read a couple portions of his foreword here. He says here, we, meaning this young group of artists, him, Wrightson, others, we didn't seek fame and fortune and would have laughed at the idea of comics one day being in vogue, something worthy of Hollywood's attention. We went because we loved to draw. We stayed largely out of moral support. He's talking about New York and, you know, largely out of moral support, and because that's where our gods and heroes lived. Frank Frazetta, Al Williamson, Roy Krenkel, Hal Foster. The fact that these giants would one day drop by our places to shoot the bull and swap stories was like a dream come true. Never mind that most had moved on from comics, realizing even if we didn't, that the golden age was over. I think they got a kick out of us, out of the youthful enthusiasm they had once known themselves when art was still an undiscovered world and every day was an exciting new discovery. Okay. Later he talks about, I read that because if you remember on The Professionals, we talked about this kind of resurgence of comics broke me kind of thing. And he, Bruce Jones really sort of talks about this sort of purity of why artists got involved in comics or in this business. And it was for artistic expression, the freedom that you got from the storytelling and stuff. And so I thought that was kind of important to kind of take a look at how people looked at it, you know, back in the 70s and 80s, probably to the degree before royalties came along and, you know, Image and all that kind of stuff. And actually some people were making pretty good money. Nobody was making any money. Okay. Here we go. This is about Warren magazine. He said the major, let's see, here we go. Here we go. Thanks to Larry Ivy, Russ Jones, Archie Goodwin, and the tyrannical, he puts that in quotation sarcastically, Jim Warren. Not only was that EC vibe still faintly alive, but Frazetta, Williamson, Heath, and other greats had even worked there. Again, he's talking about Warren magazine. All in glorious black and white and fine detail printing. The major comics publishers, by comparison, still suffocated by the code and coasting on Spider-Man and the Flash, had gone from metal to plastic printing plates and reproduction that bordered on mush. Fine line work, soft feathering, and washes, forget it. Warren, though, he may have been constantly battling bankruptcy, was not only there, his true glory days were still ahead. I doubt there would have been any fanzines without Warren. And believe me, fanzines, this is interesting. Fanzines were important to us, a place to work that actually paid. So we see all these old fanzines that have stories in them that, you know, like a lot of artists got their start in fanzines. I didn't know they were getting paid. And I was surprised to see that they actually did get paid to do that work. It says it kept us eating at times. Those and a host of other black and white comic magazines that sprang up during those days, like Web of Horror. Web of Horror, of course, was Wrightson, Bruce Jones, and Jeff Jones, I think, were the three guys that actually, and I think Wheezy Simonson was involved in that as well. That was something they were self-publishing or trying to. They had an investor and he took the money and ran. So they only got 2 issues out. But anyway, Web of Horror, Psycho, and Marvel science fiction magazines. It's hard for me now to believe we ever groused about the lack of our kind of genre. It was all about us. Even DC starting to do stuff like The Shadow and bringing back their old anthology titles like House of Mystery. All thanks in no small way to Warren. He says, there really was a weird mix of books in those days. Most kids didn't even remember comics, let alone read them. Yet thousands were being published. Dozens of titles still flourished. Chances were constantly being taken and new things always being tried. No one was getting rich, but you could make a squeaky living. And if you wished, not even have to draw superheroes. He says, as I write this, okay, here we go. More than that, Krenkel and Williamson were teaching us about Mooka, Cole, Pyle, Wyeth, Booth, St. John, Cornwell, Brangwyn, Parrish, and J.R. Neal. The dizzying list of great illustrators went on and on. Most weren't still alive, much less working. But that didn't faze us. We weren't mainstream 70 artists, and we were proud of that. So I thought that was just some interesting observations about what these guys were going through professionally at that period of time at Warren Magazine, and what a haven Warren was for these guys to really, really do some great work. And then he talks about how he and Wrightson brought in this Black Cat story to Jim Warren, and Warren hadn't seen it yet. The work had been assigned, but he hadn't seen it. It wasn't like they were turning pages in daily. They'd finished the story, bring it in. So they went into his office, and Jim Moran had found the piece of artwork that Wrightson had submitted when he was 16 that they published in the letters page. And he goes something to the effect of, why do you think we sit around here and hire guys as crappy as you? What is this garbage? And like Bruce Jones said, he was just stunned. He was like, he was already had his hand on the door to leave. And then Jim Moran holds up this piece that Wrightson did, and Wrightson laughed and said, "Oh, I did that when I was 16. Where did you ever get that?" And then he handed him the Black Cat story, which we're looking at right now. And Jim Moran was like, his jaw dropped, eyes bugged out. And as Bruce Jones tells the story, they left and went to the elevator, and Jim Moran was following him all the way, going, "Anytime you want to work for me, Wrightson, anytime you want it, buddy, just name it." And so, yeah, this was the first one. And of course, it blew everybody away. McGeeky says, the Black Cat page is what I see when I imagine black and white art. Incredibly well done. Yeah, speaking of which, I am going to do a Wraith of God black and white. I think when I get done with the series, I'm going to put together like a trade or a omnibus or something, and it's all going to be black and white. So, because there's just something to me when you do something hyper detailed like this, there's no need for color. There really isn't. And but let's take a look at this where he goes one step further. This is probably the story that Wrightson is best known for at Warren, and that's Jennifer. This is actually, they did a television thing on, was it HBO? It was like Masters of Horror or something like that, and they all did like these short story episodes, and somebody adapted this, Jennifer. This is a really disgusting and creepy story, but it's just brilliantly illustrated. And Bruce Jones wrote this as well, and Bruce Jones is a terrific writer, by the way. He even had that really impressive run on the Hulk back in the early 2000s, where the Hulk, it was more of a monster book. But anyway, this is like ink washed. So this whole story is like brush and ink, maybe some pen in there as well, and then ink washed over the top of it. Are you kidding me? Look how he's worked Uncle Creepy into this tree. Look at this tree. I mean, are you kidding me? It's just tremendous work, and just how the wrinkles come off this girl's figure. Just there's so much weight and so much depth in this work. It's just amazing. One thing I want to point out too, if you look at this right here, it says Berni with an E. Now, see, this is how he always spelled his name, but there was a professional or Olympic swimmer named Berni Wrightson, believe it or not. And he was afraid they would get confused. So he dropped the E off of his name and only went with Berni. And see, so I always associate that spelling with my favorite period of time. This may be updated because of the book. I don't know if that's actually how it was spelled when this book came out. I don't think it was actually. But anyway, so he later in his career went back to the IE spelling, which I never adopted, because it was like I was just used to, the Berni version of his name was what I associated with my favorite period of his work. So I still spell it that way, even though he had went back to his actual spelling, which was with the IE. Anyway, so Mignot says, Bruce Jones does sound familiar. Maybe I'm confusing with Chuck Jones. You have to go back and read the Warren stuff. I mean, it's just, if you don't like horror, it probably wouldn't be something you'd want to read. But if you do, and this isn't like R-rated, disgusting horror. It's, this was 1974 and 75. So disturbing sometimes, yes, but not overly gross or anything like that. Okay, now check this out. This is my personal favorite Wrightson story that he did, and it's called The Martian Saga, and it's again by Bruce Jones and illustrated by Wrightson. And this looks to me like mostly pen work, or a combination of both pen and brush. But the interesting thing about this, the whole story is told in these vertical panels, right? And it's a poem. So you see, it starts with, I had come to the land of the pale orchard. Oh, yeah. I'd come to the land of the pale ochre sand, where God shines his eye dim and cold, where the air through its thin kicks of hell of wind, which cuts through the tears in my clothes. And the great hill is bold, bright yellow clouds roll, the swirl round a silver obelisk. Once a ship, now a tomb, for my crew, for me soon. Well, we were all aware of the risk. So this whole thing is told as a poem, and it's just a great story where this guy, they crash landed on Mars. He's only got whatever oxygen he has left. And he comes across these Martians. He saves them from this big monster. He gets the beautiful girl, and they're about to, how shall we say, consummate their relationship, and he runs out of oxygen. So it has this kind of like little sort of EC twist at the end of it, but it's tremendous, and I highly recommend it. And this was that was done in Creepy issue number 87. This is one of my favorite, one of the things that Wrightson did also for Creepy and Eerie magazine was he did these like inside front cover illustrations, right? This was in the Black Cat issue, so this would have been Creepy 62. This is markers. I believe this is entirely markers. I don't think there's any watercolor. I think it's all marker from what I remember. And I love this piece. It's just Portrait of Uncle Creepy. Just signature Wrightson, sort of cartoonish, but at the same time, just well lit, depth, great looking Wrightson stuff in 1974. But he did a ton of these. And this is probably his best frontispiece. This wasn't actually printed on the inside front cover. This was actually a title page type thing. And this was, again, for Creepy 87, which was the All Mars issue. So Wrightson did this thing with 4 Martian storylines, right? War of the Worlds on the left, John Carter of Mars, The Martian Chronicles, and then I'm not sure what the last one was, with the little goofy alien dudes here. But this is like one of my favorite pieces he's ever done. And I saw this, Albert Moy had this piece 20 plus years ago, and it's like twice up, and it's painted. Okay, it's printed in gray here, but the actual artwork is painted. And he wanted $4,500, like 25 years ago, which might as well have been $1 million to me at the time. So I sat there and looked at it and just was like, oh, weeping tears, like if only I had $4,500 kind of thing. Now this is probably $100,000 or more. But yeah, I saw it up close and personal and just, oh, so good. Kellraiser says, for $9.99, thank you so much, Kellraiser. Appreciate that very much. I watched Finch's drawing posts, and he was doing clothing folds and wrinkles. He talked about his inspirations for doing them, and I was surprised he never mentioned Wrightson, who was a master of it to me. I don't think anybody ever did clothing wrinkles. Thank you again for that, Kellraiser. Appreciate it very much. I don't think anybody ever did. Look at the weight and volume he creates just in this thing, this cloak wrapping up this Martian. I got all my wrinkle stuff from Wrightson. Got most of my stuff from Wrightson. Wrightson, Frazetta, Neil Adams. Those are the guys that I looked at the most. A little bit Steranko here and there. But yeah, Frazetta, Wrightson, Neil Adams, and like I said, a little bit of Steranko. That more so storytelling. than necessarily drawing. So that's a tremendous piece right there. I want to take a moment now and take a look at some books real quickly, just so you guys, if you're interested in getting some reference material or collections, so you don't have to go out and buy every stinking magazine that he ever did or that he ever worked on. So let's take a look at this real quick. Dun, 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 dun. It's so heroic. Okay. I wanted to do all this sort of in historical order, but it's kind of hard because things kind of cross over and change. All right. So this is the book. This is the book that I was reading that Bruce Jones stuff from. And this was published by Dark Horse a few years ago. It's basically just a complete collection of all of Wrightson's stories in Creepy and Eerie magazine. He didn't do that many, surprisingly. Of course, the Black Cat, right? I mean, this is just freaking tremendous. There's one panel. I mean, there's tons of great panels in here. Like, look at that use of negative space to show those houses at night. Look at this. He's accidentally killed his wife. At least that's kind of how they portray it here. And he's going to wall her up in the wall, right? And so here's the guy standing here. You've got this entire, he's down in the basement. Look at all this extra junk that Wrightson puts in. You know, I mean, that's just like, and he's putting in a lot of work, right? Look at this. This is the panel thing. These guys come to his door, the constables, or whatever. What happened to your wife, buddy? Kind of thing. And look at the inside of this house and how he's used the light and the shadows there to kind of define the shapes. This is a masterclass in lighting, man. So then they go down the stairs and he's saying, "Oh, are you kidding me? Do you think I walled my wife up into these walls?" And he taps the wall, and then the cat meows, and of course he walled the black cat up in there with his wife, and so he gets busted. Spoiler. Anyway, then we got Jennifer here. I won't go through the whole story, but again, this is all ink wash, ink and ink wash. This is really a disturbing and creepy story, but really terrific. Clarice, another poem that Bruce Jones wrote, the Wrightson illustrated, really nice. I read a story here recently where this is by Carmen Infantino, inked by Wrightson, written by Bruce Jones. And Carmen was out of work, and they decided to do this story for him to give him some work. And Wrightson said, "I'll ink it. You know, Bruce, you write it for Carmine, and Carmen will draw it, and I'll ink it." And so, you know, those are it's just a story of how Wrightson was always thinking of other people. You know, that was really nice. Then there's a Chaikin story in here, I think, that Wrightson inked. But then this is a good one too, The Laughing Man. Again, there's some gray wash in there along with the inks. Here's the Martian story. As you can see, the whole monster breaking out of the cage. I love this shot right here where he shoots him with his laser gun, and look at that lighting effect. Where the laser is basically providing all the light. Pepper Lake Monster is another big one that was just, you know, really, really cool. Kind of a twist on the Loch Ness Monster story. Little Nemo in Slumberland kind of thing with his kids. He's having nightmares. These demons are coming and tormenting him at night. And this one, H.P. Lovecraft's Cool Air. Now, Wrightson adapted this himself. This is 1974. So he wrote it and did the illustration for it. This is really some nice work. Look at the detail in here. There's a Chaikin story that he inked. So you have Chaikin penciling. And then, of course, the Muck Monster story, which the color on this is not great, but it's a tremendous story, and the artwork in it is just absolutely tremendous. I used this, inspired me, this rock cliff here with this ooze on one of my Excalibur covers that Tim Townsend inked. I have a couple of the team members jumping off this cliff, and it's all like got this kind of Wrightson line work in it. So anyway, it's a Frankenstein story there. Some of the covers, and then it's got all of his, inside front cover artwork, from Creepy and Eerie. Or that Santa one. Mark Alessi at CrossGen had this original hanging on his wall in the office. This is actually by the Headless Horseman is by Simonson, but then inked by Wrightson. So anyway, so there's a lot of cool stuff in there. And we'll look at some of this other stuff as we move along. But that was that's a good book, and I don't think it's too expensive. Some of these ones I'll get to are because they're more collectible. They tend to be kind of pricey. But so anyway, one of the other things he was doing at the time, not like 1974, 75, 76, that era, was working for National Lampoon. This is the cover to the National Lampoon Encyclopedia of Humor, which actually has a really nice Wrightson cover on it. He also did some stories. Now, some of the stories in here is kind of, I have to admit, as a youngster, I got a hold of him. There's a Bewitched parody in here that I think is really disgusting that I actually took offense to. That was one of the reasons that kind of prompted me to get rid of all my Wrightson stuff. But later I just kind of looked at it and said, you know what? The job's a job, right? I wouldn't have done it, but, everybody's different. So, but he did do some memorable stuff in there as well. Now this one always cracked me up. This is from issue of National Lampoon. And I'll tell you, finding this stuff, which I did, but I had to search it out. This is a one-page strip called Redneck. And it's basically this guy's a construction worker. And he's like yelling at some hippies here. And he opens up a can of beer in their face and sprays them with it, and then he beats the crap out of them and flies off. And this is basically this, I would assume that Wrightson would associate more with the hippies than he would with this, redneck conservative beating the crap out of all these hippies. But anyway, I always thought it was kind of a funny story. Yeah, Bewitched was a great show. I loved Bewitched, but the parody was really, really raunchy. Yep. The Wright's name of Solomon Kane was in Savage. No, it's Conan the Barbarians. You're right. I've got it. I've got that issue. Oh, wait a minute. I remember that Bewitched. See, Marcus knows. We need the redneck to return. The hippies were asking for it. I know, it's kind of funny now how you kind of look at that and go, I kind of can associate with, I kind of understand where the redneck was coming from. Anyway, Eric the Guapo's here. He's making jokes about Uncle Creepy. Okay. So it was about this time then where Wrightson started getting involved in doing his own thing. It's like, and I've talked about this before, it's kind of like taking comic art and turning it into fine art, right? Can we make a living doing posters and prints and portfolios and high-end art that you feel maybe you can't do in comics because comics is too restrictive, okay? And so that's what these guys were doing. And I say these guys, I mean like Barry Smith, Kaluta, Jeff Jones, guys like that, when they formed the studio. Now, Wrightson had a relationship with Christopher Zavisa, who was a publisher at that time. And he published a look back, which we'll get to in a minute. But he also published a series of posters. And you guys will remember when we were doing Wrightson Images for the Day, I don't know, it was months ago now, where he did a series of like 12 posters. I think I ran them all one week after the other, all the posters in that series. But I want to take a look at a couple of them. And this is stuff when he would sort of, I guess at the time, we kind of felt like maybe he had, by 1975, he had kind of left comics and was doing this now, was doing illustration, but still comic themed type illustration, right? So he was still going to the comic book audience, but coming just with his art as opposed to with stories, right? And I was one of those guys who'd been suckered into it. I'd become a Wrightson honk at this time, and I bought everything and anything he did. Now, this is Counsel to a Minion, right? This is essentially Satan sitting on his throne in hell. He has these naked girls climbing up the rocks, waiting on him. It's a tremendous piece. But here's the amazing thing. As a Christian growing up, and I still am today, but as a Christian kid, I actually bought this poster and hung it on my wall. I don't know how my parents, my dad probably wouldn't have cared, but my mom, she has got to be the most understanding woman in the world, you know. But yeah, so I basically had a picture of Satan sitting on his throne, but it was so freaking cool that I didn't really sort of think about any moral implications of it. I just, you know, was just into the image. So I bring this up because it was one of my favorite pieces he did, even though the subject matter was completely horrific and something that I should never be promoting or hanging on my wall. And yet, as I was a 76, so I was 13 years old, 12 years old. So I bought it and made it up on my wall. The other one of those posters that he did that I bought in part of this, which is called Christopher Enterprises, Christopher Zavisa Publishing, was this one. And I had this one on my wall. It's called Freaks. So basically you have this guy with an axe and all these weird mutant circus freak type things tackling him on this cliff as he's falling down this hill. This looks like it's inked, and well, I mean, it's definitely inked, and it looks like straight up watercolor. Might have been some marker in there as well, but it looks like watercolor to me. But so he did a series of these posters. For Christopher Zavisa. And I like some of them, not all of them I love, but some of them, I like some of them. And these were a couple that ended up hanging on my wall. But there was also, there was a poster called Taking No Chances, where all these guys are killing this vampire, and they got like a spear through the, or, you know, big wooden stake through the heart. A guy's holding up a huge cross. Another guy's got a band of garlic. There's a window in the background of this room they're in. You can see that the sun is rising. So it's like, you know, taking no chances. They're covering all their bases, killing the vampire. And I thought that was a pretty good one too. And of course, Memento is the famous one where the axe murderer is leaning against this wooden fence and he's got all the heads that he's chopped off of his victims. So I think I don't think I bought that one. I think it was just Freaks and Counsel to a Minion were the only two. This may have been my favorite of that poster set. This is Loggerhead. And this is a inked watercolor, just giant turtle crushing these dudes' boat. I don't know. I just really like this. And that was part of this collection too. And this one is called Loggerhead. All these posters you can probably find on eBay in anywhere from, you know, $25 to $125 price range. It just depends. It's all over the place. I don't have this one. I want to get it though. That's because I don't know. I just dig it. Maybe just because I dig giant turtles. So he was doing all this kind of stuff, and this was probably from 1976 to probably 79 that he was in this studio with Barry Smith, Jeff Jones, and Michael Kaluta, right? And they had rented out this huge space in New York City, this loft, right? And they all, I guess, had their own corner. So it wasn't like it was this huge studio where there's stuff everywhere. It's like everybody was concentrated in their own corner, I guess. They had this big open space in the middle, I suppose, and a couch in there, I guess. And one of the funny stories was that I want to say was it Jones and Wrightson? There was all these rats in there. They didn't want to kill the rats, so they got these like salad tongs. And apparently, they picked up these rats, put them in a garbage bag, took them downstairs, took them out to where the dumpster was, dumped them out, and then they all hit the ground and ran right back into the building. So that's what you get for being an animal advocate, I guess. Yeah, they probably would have. The Mephisto images that he drew, some of that stuff was great too. Well, I tell you, I had a girlfriend in high school, and I showed her, and I was going through this Wrightson stage where all my artwork was just, axe murderers and just monsters and zombies and crap. And she was freaked out when she saw it. I was some kind of weirdo. I learned later in life to hide my comic collection and all my weird art when I was, from the girls I was dating. But anyway, so at the end of this rather interesting and legendary studio, Dragon's Dreams put out this book called The Studio. And each person in the studio, again, Jones, Smith, Kaluta, and Wrightson, all had a chapter in this book where it just kind of showcased their art. And it was near the tail end of this that probably, I think, Wrightson started working on the Frankenstein in 1977 while he was in the studio. And I don't know if he got it all completely done before the studio ended. But you'll see some of it featured in this book. The problem with this book is it's super freaking expensive. And I do not believe this has ever been reprinted. I do have a copy of it, but I got it when I was a kid, but I've read the crap out of it, so it's just beat to heck. Which, those of you who know me as a collector, I don't like my books and my comics being beat up. I like to keep them in mint condition, but this one I just read to death. So let me let's take a look at the actual thing here. So you can see it was in alphabetical order, and I was very uninterested in everybody else's artwork in here when I bought it, except Barry Smith a little bit. Jeff Jones, I thought his stuff was interesting. So you can see the pictures here of, I want to say, that looks like that's Wrightson's corner. That's Barry Smith. That's Kaluta. That's Jeff Jones. So they had these areas where they kind of were doing their own thing. And a lot of space, and it was really, really cool. I mean, they were kind of like the rock stars of comics at that time. They were the Image guys before there was Image guys. And so that's Wrightson, Jones, Smith, and Kaluta in that order from left to right. And it makes me kind of long for those days. I mean, that was like when artists were being artists, right? There's some more pictures in the studio. Jeff Jones there, Wrightson and Jones here. It's Jones again. Oh, again, because it's the lead into his chapter. Now, since this is a Wrightson show, I'm going to skip through all this stuff. We got some Kaluta stuff in here, and then some nice shadow work here. We'll get to the Barry Smith chapter, and then we get to the end, which is Wrightson, because they did it in alphabetical order. And I will tell you this: those of you who watch Graybeard Studio Wednesdays with me, David Williams, Kelsey, and Gary Martin, we're going to be doing a studio sketchbook, the best stuff that we've done on the show. At the end of the year, we'll do one every year, and it'll be formatted sort of like this, where everybody will have their own chapter. So it'll be kind of fun to look forward to at the end of the year. There's the Mementos poster I was talking about, where the axe murderer has all these heads on a fence post. But anyway, so then you got your pictures of Wrightson working in his studio space. Look at that giant drafting table. It's almost sitting up at a 90-degree angle. He's working on Toccata and Fugue in D minor, which was a pencil drawing. There's another poster. I want to say that Zavisa published as well, but it wasn't part of that same poster set. So anyway, you've got a whole bunch of different stuff. That's some movie concept work right there that he did. You know, some of this stuff I'll get to separately. You got some Frank stuff. You got some of the posters. There's the one of Taking No Chances that I was telling you about, where they're killing the vampire with every means possible. There's some more of the posters. Bad Doings and Knuckle Down's Lonesome, whatever that means. This is an interesting piece because it was watercolor, acrylic, and marker. I think he used just about everything he had on the table. I have this poster, which is Breakfast, which I did an opening or an unboxing video of. This is, well, we'll get to this in a minute. This is the poster, but I have some more to talk about this. But this gives you kind of the process of how he did it. There's the pencil drawing. I said the Toccata and Fugue in D minor. It's a pencil drawing poster. Council Dominion there, the one that was hanging on my wall. But anyway, this book is several $100s. You can find a copy. And one of the other things that sort of came out in this period of time were, I guess you'd classify them as sort of fanzine type stuff, but this was the Berni Wrightson catalog, and he had a showing in at a New York gallery, October of 1977. I love this piece. I don't think it ever got published. Absolutely Incredible Comics #1. I don't think it ever got finished. I don't even know if that book ever got published. But, you know, the robot thing here, it's all ink wash. It's just a tremendous piece. You're kind of like, man, I'd love to see that story. This is a poster for the show, right? Where he talks about his compulsion. Basically what it is, it's a head sitting on some feet and hands, I think. And this is like the axe from an axe murderer, and the blood is scrawled into the wall. Somebody please stop me. He's talking about sort of like the double entendre there is his compulsion to draw this weird and creepy stuff, you know. So anyway, this is some of the art that appeared in the gallery showing, you know, all the originals that were there. Probably sold a bunch of this stuff at, you know, what we would consider incredibly cheap prices today. A little bit of Frankenstein stuff in the back. Early Captain Stern stuff. And there's that portrait of Uncle Creepy. Some purple photography. That's something we didn't talk about. He did this story. What was this? I don't know, late 60s, early 70s porn magazine called Swank. It was kind of like, it was more like Playboy. It wasn't like, you know, hardcore or anything, but it was like basically just hippie chicks out in the woods naked. And he did like 4 or 6 stories with Von Baudet that were humorous, you know, stories that would fit into that type of a magazine. And actually was able to find all those and had them in my collection as well. If my mom found that out, I'd have been a dead man too. I don't have many more though. Ooh, wait a minute. Henry Jeremick says there is a full story of that robot story. I've seen it before. It has been published. Okay. I have not seen that. That's pretty amazing for me. Citizen Ronan says the studio book is $200 on the Bay. There's a few of them. There you go. Okay. So that book, then of course, led into this book. And I want to take a look at it in a little bit, but not right now, because there's some other stuff I want to go over before we get to this. This was basically a retrospective of his career done in 1979. Okay. And so for my money, just at the height of his popularity and his talent. So he was 31 years old when they did this massive retrospective of his career. I mean, that's amazing. that you're at the pinnacle of your career at 31 years old. I had barely broken into comics at 31 years old. I mean, it's just amazing. It's like, how do you, when you're that great that early in life, what do you do for the rest of your life? It's, it's like keeping up with your own legend. It's amazing. But anyway, so this came out in 1979, and we'll get to that. I've got a copy here. We'll thumb through it real quickly here in a little bit. But during this period of time, the studio, from about 1976, probably his last work for Warren was about 1976. Then he started doing portfolios. And again, what we talked about just a little bit earlier, this kind of bringing comic art to the fine arts, trying to push it into fine arts. He did a series of portfolios. This was a contribution to the Edgar Rice Burroughs portfolio. He just did one plate in it, and this is the Monster Men. Love this piece. You want to talk about spotting blacks and creating volume. This creature, and even that girl's dress, the billowing of her dress right here, and this forearm with all the veins and everything in it. I mean, there's no background other than this down here. It's just a vignette, but it's so awesome. It has so much weight. It's my favorite piece in the portfolio. I actually own the portfolio. It's not in the greatest of shape. That's the kind of thing that has a little water damage to it, which kind of bummed me out. But it's a super expensive portfolio. It's really big. It's like 18 by 24 or something. I mean, it's just absurd. And so just finding one is hard enough. And I just took the one I could find that was in whatever condition it was in. But man alive, just look at the shadow and the vein work on these arms and stuff. It's just, love it. Love it. This is probably my favorite portfolio he did. I would love for this to be a thing again where you could like publish portfolios and people would buy them. Apparitions. There was two editions of this. There was the regular edition, and then there was a signed and numbered edition, which I have. He did 1,000 of these, signed and numbered. It had 4 color plates in it and 1 black and white. If you got the signed and numbered, there was a black and white Conan piece in there. And I showed every print in this portfolio, including the black and white Conan piece, on one of the Wrightson images of the day over the course of these last 100 episodes. This was produced by Sal Q Productions, which is Sal Quattorchio, or however you pronounce it. And this was 1978. So again, you're just right in that, just like the pinnacle. I mean, look at this zombie decaying guy and all this foliage and everything. And it's just incredible. Again, you sort of have to like this subject matter, but I think you can still appreciate the quality of the work, even if you may not be a fan of the subject matter. And I'm not necessarily a horror fan as much as I am as a quality fan. And so anybody that does anything in any genre that's really, really good, I'm going to like it. I just happen to be a monster fan, so I kind of have an affinity towards this stuff for whatever bizarre reason, but it's also just exceptionally well done. I wouldn't buy horror just to buy horror, but if it's drawn like this, yeah, I'll get it. This is probably, in my opinion, his worst portfolio. This one is, that Apparitions portfolio is pretty inexpensive, and it's his best portfolio. So if you want to get that, you could get it pretty cheap. This is, however, is pretty expensive, and it's his worst portfolio. This is the best piece in the whole portfolio when it's on the envelope. These were all oil paintings, and I would say at the time that he did these, he was still kind of figuring oil painting out. And I don't know if he ever did figure it out, to be honest with you, but they weren't great. The pencil drawings they ended up painting were really great, but I didn't think the painting was all that successful on most of the printing in here, most of the prints in here. The one that I do think was the most successful was Murders in the Rue Morgue, where you had the orangutan here, and I do like the sort of painterly background he did here. It's simple. It's well defined. It's almost like an ink wash, with all the wrinkles and everything in the dresses and stuff. It's like he didn't let the paint overpower the detail. This feels more, except for the background, it feels more like a oil painting glaze than it does real heavy oil painting. But again, here's a guy, they're saying, you know what, I want to get into oil painting. I want to try some oil painting, and again, trying to push the genre, the genre of fantasy into kind of like what Frazetta did into fine art. But that's the Edgar Rice Burroughs portfolio. Now, there's one other portfolio that I want to take note of. And this one's super expensive. And I used to have this and I don't. It ticks me off because it's such a great Frankenstein piece. This did not appear in the book. It only appeared in this portfolio and then where it got reprinted someplace else. But this is a tremendous piece. Your lighting source is down here. And you can see all the cast shadows and stuff up here on the wall. It's just freaking amazing. And how he sort of obscures the monster behind all these test tubes. And I mean, it's just, this was called the Portfolio of Fantasy, or pardon me, was it? Yeah, the Portfolio of Fantasy. And it had this piece in it. It had a piece by Dan Green, the inker who just passed away. He was a good penciler too. There's a Kaluta piece in here, and I want to say there's a Jeff Jones piece. So like everybody from the studio except Barry Smith. And that's where Dan Green, I guess, came in. But I can't remember who published this. But again, this is oversized, just incredible. This is true. Getting back to the Edgar Allan Poe portfolio. And Marcus Killicrew says oils are hard to capture in print. He had a real hard time photographing those. They were getting reflection and glare. It was just, they just, yeah. The ones with the heavier oil on them didn't reproduce that great. And they were too dark in some cases. Bill Hawley says, I was lucky and got him to sign my Frankenstein's monsters in the lab print. A true legend. Indeed he was. And super nice guy. I just wish he had a better memory, at least about me. Paul Taylor says the only horror comic I ever regularly read was Werewolf by Night. That was one of my favorites too. Enrico says much of Marvel was inspired from horror novels, body horror, monsters, films, and such. I guess it depends on what titles we're talking about. Anyway, so this is prior. This is when I think he was working on Frankenstein or knew he was going to do Frankenstein. And this is like an earlier, maybe a test piece he did because it was not intended. I don't think it was ever he thought this was going to go in the book. And that's the crazy thing about some of the pieces in the Frankenstein book that never even made it into the book. You're just like, are you kidding me? I'm going to put them all in. But, it's just me. Oh, we don't want to see that because that was what I used for the, get rid of that. Okay, I want to backtrack just on a couple of things real quickly here. One of the things also that Wrightson had out there were books, okay? Now, this is Bad Time Stories. This came out in 1972, I guess. And this had a collection basically of his fanzine stories. Some of them were real early on, and he was still kind of finding his way, and some of them are a little bit more accomplished. But this was a collection of his stories, and this is, I guess, technically considered a fanzine. I don't know who published it, but you can get this for, around $100, depending on the condition. I used to have a copy of this. Again, I don't. This candle, this human creature candle right here, I've ripped this off so many times. But the interesting thing about this is this collection of stories then was reprinted in 1978 through Archival Press, and it was called Tales You've All Seen Before, Back for More. And again, I love the fact that this is like lettering for the title. Wrightson actually did the lettering for this book. I mean, he did that. He designed that title logo, hand did it. There was no computers back then to come up with really cool logos. You had to do them yourself. I really like this cover piece. And I remember this book coming out and buying it. And it wasn't until later, because this is 1978, so I was 14. And, you know, I was still discovering stuff that Wrightson had done that I was unaware of, you know. So I found out that this was basically a reprint of all the Bad Times stories, you know, so I had to go back and get Bad Time stories, of course. I don't have this book anymore either, which kind of ticks me off. This is expensive. This is like I mean, you can get Bad Time stories cheaper than you can get this, which is really bizarre to me. In good condition. I mean, there's some copies on eBay right now that are 40 or 50 bucks and they're kind of beat up. So this was the first one I bought that had this collection of stories in it. Now then in 1980, or is it 81, they reprinted it yet again by Mother of Pearl, printed this, or published this. And this is The Mutants, but it's the same selection of stories again, this time with the cover from the Zavisa print, Taking No Chances. So you got 3 different collections of the same thing that you can go and pick up if, you know, you want to see those stories. Now, this is a really underrated thing that's out there. It was 1974, and this was published by Phil Suling. He used to put on the big New York shows back in the day. This is the Monsters Color the Creature book. This is a coloring book, and it is like 12 by 18. I mean, it's big. It's bigger than that. It's probably 13 by 19. And it has all this black and white. And some of the stuff in here is just stunning. It's so good. And I don't think this is that expensive. I can get this pretty cheap, actually, on eBay. And what Wrightson did was, apparently, as the story goes, he sold the originals, but then he would also offer to hand color them for extra money, right? So even back then, it was, and even if you're a superstar, we still had to sell our artwork to get, you know, to pay bills. And because I got to believe that he did all this artwork for this book. It probably didn't sell great. So how much money did he really make off of it, right? So selling the originals was a way to, you know, make money on this project. And so there's several of these pieces floating around that are hand colored, the originals that are hand colored by Wrightson, which I think is pretty interesting. Paul Taylor, Canadian $10. Thank you so much. Because I'm very late tonight. New really fun computer game called Starfield just came out. This episode looks really interesting, and I don't know squat about Wrightson, so I'll have to check it out in the rerun. Please do, Paul. You'll find it fascinating, I'm sure. But you know, you got to get your priorities straight, man. New video games. Thank you for the $10, Paul. I appreciate it very much. Christina Lynn says that kind of looks like the logo for the Munsters show. Wonder, maybe. Let's see. Enrico says the heart of the FF book surrounds the Thing, the Incredible Hulk's obvious Frankenstein monster, and Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. Yes. Spider-Man. Steve is mostly known for his horror work before Spider-Man. True. All true. I get your point. Paul Taylor, again, that's really sad commentary on the industry. I can't make a living doing my usual job, so I had to do extra work outside my usual job to make ends meet. Well, yeah, but it's also, I think, again, you missed the part where I read probably some of the foreword by Bruce Jones in the Creepy Collection book for his Wrightson's Warren magazine work, where they got into the industry because they loved art and they wanted to be artists and they wanted to have that kind of freedom to create. And it was never about the money, which is a good thing because, you know, most of us we made enough money to get by, but no one's getting rich with the exception of, you know, McFarlane and Liefeld and guys like that. But most of us are not. We're doing it because we love it. And it's a great way. If you're working commercial art, you're doing storyboards, you're doing ads for whatever, and you're a hired hand drawing stuff you don't care about. When you're doing fantasy art, if you're into fantasy art, of course, which I am, and if you're into the subject matter, this is like you can do whatever you want. It's like the sky's the limit. Your imagination is, and you just hope that you can sell enough of it to make ends meet, but you're getting to do what you want to do. And so that's kind of the trade-off, I think, for not getting rich, is to have that sort of freedom to artistically, I don't want to sound pretentious, but to artistically express yourself and to do things that you wouldn't get an opportunity to do if you're working for somebody else. So it's a trade-off for sure. But that book, get that coloring book. That's the the pieces in it are amazing. They really, really are. It's like a pinup book, an illustration book. It's just the level of work he put into each piece, and it's like you'd have to buy two of them, right? One to keep the artwork and the other one to screw around and color on. One other book I don't have that's out there would also be probably considered a fanzine. I had this, I sold it, and then I bought it again, and I sold it again. I can't even explain why, but I got to get this. This is probably $80, $100. The Berni Wrightson Treasury, which again is just a collection of stuff. This is some of his older stuff. But again, if you're a completist, maybe that's why I got rid of it, because it didn't have like his best stuff in it. But it was like, do you want to just have the best work, or do you want to be a completist? And when I was younger, I was a completist. Now I'm just kind of looking at the stuff that I really, really like. So maybe that's why I got rid of it again. But then I forget, right? And then I buy it again. Then I look at it and go, oh, yeah, I know why I got rid of this. And then you get rid of it again. And then 3 years later, like, man, I wish I had the Wrightson Treasury. But anyway, so that's floating out there as well with some of his earlier stuff. And this is an earlier oil painting again by Wrightson here. You're talking about the coloring book? I don't think so, but I could be wrong. I just have the coloring book by itself. I don't know that it came in an envelope, but it may have. Because it's practically a portfolio, so. Buy more than one copy. Solves all the issues. That's what I say. Always buy more than one copy. Speaking of that, before we get into Frankenstein and my top 5 and the cryptids, let's take a look at what I'm doing. Enough about this Wrightson character. I'm going to take a couple of moments here just to go over this real quickly because it is important. I do have a campaign called Wraith of God Blood Hunters. I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, know that. There is a link in the description of this video to take you to this campaign. Now, what's important about this, other than the fact that it's my latest project, is that I'm almost done. I have half a page of the Kit Carter backup story to finish coloring, and I'm done. Okay? All the stories and half the Kit Carter story are lettered. Okay? And all I have to do is finish coloring this half page, get the rest of the Kit Carter pages to the letterer to get them lettered, get them proofread by Christina, get them over to the designer, and then I have to do the title pages, because each story in here, there's 4 stories in it, the Wraith of God story plus Garbage Man Nightclub and Kit Carter. They will all have their own separate title page. There's a bulletins page in there, and a letters page in there. And of course, Adam Miller's pinup, who won the art contest, is in there. So there's like little editorial pages that I have to put together. But this should all be in the hands of the designer to put together for the printer by the end of this week, which means I am assuming that the following week it'll be at the printers. So we're looking at maybe 2 weeks tops before I close this sucker down. If we get to 150, which I believe we will, we're at 149,265 right now. We get the free bookmark, which I'll show that in a second after I'm done with this, the artwork for that. So there's a lot of free stuff that comes with this baby. You get the Kit Carter card. You get the Dan Lawless Wraith of God card. You get the Aaron Lopresti, that's me, Garbage Man card. The Esther Queen of Hearts playing card. All this stuff are stretch goals, free. You get them. You order a book, you get all this stuff for free. There's Adam Miller's pinup. You have 4 cover options to choose from. You've got the Simon Bisley exclusive cover. You got my wraparound cover. You got the Tales of Suspense tribute cover. This features obviously the backup characters, Garbage Man and the Nightclub. Give them a little bit of love. And then, of course, the Tomb of Dracula #1 tribute cover that I did. That was based on Neil Adams' cover. So you have 4 cover options. You can get all 4 if you want. I highly recommend it. Or you can just get one, your favorite. So we have some pages in here colored. Dan Lawless coloring the Garbage Man story. Kelsey Shannon coloring the Nightclub story. The big elephant guy. A lot of fun. And, you know, if you want to get back to that sort of, this is what comics should be kind of feel, I really think you'll dig this book. And then there's Kit Carter here. Now, the Kit Carter story in here is 14 pages, but it's really presented more like a newspaper, Sunday newspaper strip. So you have 14 separate episodes that are all part of a longer continuity. I'll be launching the Kit Carter graphic novel campaign right after this, and it'll be straight comic book narrative. It won't be a Sunday page format like you'll see in this book. But this was originally designed to be kind of an online comic strip, and so that's why it's in this format. The first 14 episodes are, but then the graphic novel will be a straight comic book read. So, you know, and you've got the Garbage Man limited edition print. These all come signed and numbered, and that's a companion piece to the Wraith of God limited edition signed and numbered print from the first campaign. And then you've got the Wraith of God Roughs Volume 2. This has 48 pages of design and layouts that I worked on for the book. And so you can kind of look at this and see what the page looked like when I roughed it out and what it looks like in the final form. So these are, if you're an artist or you like art or you like process, this is a great book. These are all signed and numbered limited edition as well. They're only $15, but they are signed and numbered, and there's not like, this is not an endless supply of these things. The numbers are based on what you guys order. So once it's sold out, it's gone. There's your Merv the Astro Chimp card that you get for signing up early. If you want this card, and my card collection is going to be expanding to probably 25 cards, card set. And most of the cards are free just by backing the campaign, but this is early sign up only. So if you didn't sign up early, you're not going to get this for free, but you can still buy it for $5. So there you go. All this stuff is available. All those stretch goals are unlocked. We're ready to rock and roll. So yeah, so we've got probably about 2 weeks left on this campaign. So please, if you haven't backed, please consider doing so. You can also get the first issue, the second printing with a new cover, if you missed that. So you can get and just read everything at once and have all the stories and everything in there. So in a nutshell, it's a monster Western, Batman-esque sort of character who travels around the West and hunts monsters with his companion, Esther, who's kind of his Alfred. They have a very contentious relationship. So there's that kind of part of the subplot while they're hunting monsters. It was very well received. The first issue was. So if you haven't checked it out, please consider doing so. There you go. So there's my big sales pitch. Oh, and the artwork for the bookmark is right here. I haven't colored it yet because I wanted to make sure we're going to get there, but I'm pretty much convinced we're getting there. I'll probably offer this original up for sale in the campaign as well, kind of push us over if we need it. So keep your eyes open for that. I'll be sending out an update either tomorrow or Tuesday to everybody that's backed or everybody that's signed up that wants information. They'll give us complete, again, a recapping of the update of where we're at, how soon it'll be done, and anything new that's coming up there. So, Kelraiser says, how do we contact you to get a t-shirt? Aaron at aaronlopresti.com will do it. So if you go to my website, which is aaronlopresti.com, you can, there'll be an email link there, or you can just aaron@aaronlopresti.com, or you can message me on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram and get a hold of me that way. I do have t-shirts left, not all sizes, but I think pretty much all sizes. But contact me, find out what size you are, which one you're looking for. I'll go check the inventory, see what I've got. There you go. Come on, you cheapskates, get it to 150K. All righty, back to our good friend Berni Wrightson. Before we get to Frankenstein, though, which is kind of the crowning achievement of his career, let's take a look at my my top 5 for this week. To get a shot of water there, doing a lot of talking. No one ever accused me of not being able to talk. They've accused me of not being able to draw, but okay. So these are my top 5 Wrightson images. Now, not Wrightson comics, not just spanning his career, the 5 illustrations or images that are my favorite. And this was ridiculous to even attempt to do this, but I did it just for the sake of it. The number 1 piece is definite. All the rest are in a constant state of flux. But here we go. Number 5. Gotta push some buttons. All righty. This is a title page or to House of Mystery. Wrightson did a bunch of these. So basically, you open up the book, and this is the first thing you get before you start getting your anthology of stories. I love this piece. And the interesting thing is, I think this was 75, maybe. So this is 74, 75. Wrightson was really kicking butt. And this is Cain from the, Abel from the House of Secrets, and this is Cain, his brother, from the House of Mystery. This guy's in a big water cooler with a bunch of bananas, which is kind of funny. Look at the detail here. These books and these vases and the little skulls right in here and the little podium, and just the amount of detail back here is ridiculous. Can you imagine, being an editor and Wrightson coming in and dropping off, hey, here's that frontispiece you wanted, and you're like, you almost feel guilty giving the guy just normal page rate. But anyway, so the interesting thing about this is artist Sean McManus, you guys may know him, he had this original. But then, like many of us, went through periods of time where we didn't have any work and had to sell part of our collection. And I believe that's what happened with him. And so he no longer has this, which is a crying shame because I'm sure he's crying about it. I am, and I never even had it. So do you hear my dog howling at another delivery guy? It's amazing. I had several Wrightson pieces. Like I had headshots of Uncle Creepy and Cousin Eerie from their letters page that I had to sell. I had a beautiful, not Gonzalo Mayo, but the other Vampirella artist. I had a Vampirella page by the guy, Jose Gonzalez. Oh, so good. And I had to get rid of that during some period of time where I had no work. And that's just the life of a comic book artist. And I would never say comics broke me, because they didn't. I broke comics. So anyway, that's number 5. Here's number 4. Here's number... Now, you remember the coloring book we took a look at? This is in that coloring book. Are you freaking kidding me? This is an old witch, very much like the old witch from EC Comics. Not exactly, but you got to believe that's what he based it on. Look at that. That's all pen, man. There looks like there's some dry brush in here, like right in here. But this is all pen. All these lines, this is all pen. Then look at this big clunky, loose. It's almost Frank Miller-esque, this sleeve right here, isn't it? Don't you think? Just really cool. Some cross-hatching down here. Just the amount of detail. This is a coloring book. Do you want to go in there and ruin this by coloring it? Not me. But anyway, the book is full of illustrations like this, that coloring book. So if you can get a copy of it, I highly recommend it. Okay, so that's number 4. Number 3. Now this, we're going to go into the Frankenstein vault here. And this is my favorite Frankenstein piece. And again, that changes from week to week. But most of the time, this is my favorite Frankenstein piece. And it didn't even get used in the book. You can see the monster here clinging to the tree. Dr. Frankenstein here in the graveyard. They did a print of this. And I had a print of it at one time. And I think I got rid of the print too. Or it got damaged in one of our moves. But I just freaking love this piece. I mean, what do you say? The details off the charts. I don't know. It's just different. It's just weird and cool how he's kind of like clinging to this tree. And just look at the grass. And the work, doing this kind of Franklin Booth thing, the pen and ink style. I mean, there's a gazillion Frankenstein pieces that are great. So to say this is the best one would probably be stupid, but it's just my favorite most of the time. Although it does change. But for today, that's my favorite. Okay, number 2. This is one we've already seen, but I'm going to show it again. I love this piece. Absolutely love this piece. I love the monster. Wrightson was never really good at women. This is a pretty good female drawing though. But that monster, oh my gosh. This, doesn't it feel like that thing is made out of clay? You could just pick it up off the paper. It's just, oh my gosh, I don't know. I don't know what to say except I love it. Yeah, there you go. We've already discussed how great this piece is, but there it is. My second favorite Wrightson piece or image. And now the first. And anybody who's seen the channel more than once probably knows this tragic story, but I'll tell it again because my life is nothing without tragedy. Here we go. This is the dragon sleeping. This is the painting. This is the actual picture of the painting. Now, I didn't own the painting. I owned the drawing to this. And the reason this is my favorite is I love the dragon. I ripped this dragon off so many times as a kid. I can't even tell you. And I just the weightiness again, like this arm kind of laying over the tail, which goes underneath him. So he's like laying across his own tail. I don't know. And it was, it had a process. It showed 4 shots, the process of this painting being created in his studio book, which I got as a kid as well. So that might have had something to do with it. But anyway, Albert Moy had this painting, I don't know, years ago, and wanted 20 grand for it. This would probably be $100,000 now. So it was never in my price range. However, did I do my number 1 thing? Yeah, okay. Now this is my number 1 thing. Okay, this is what I did own. And when Shelley had to go on disability from teaching, we were kind of unsure of our finances, and I kind of panicked and I sold this. This is the original pencil drawing. I actually owned this piece right here. I bought it from Mitch Itkowitz back in '93 at San Diego. Wrightson, it was selling a bunch of his stuff. I think it was a divorce settlement or something like that. It was either a tax situation or a divorce settlement. I can't remember. And this was up and it was $650. And so I bought it, and I sold it probably 10 years ago now, when Shelley had to go on disability. As it turned out, we were fine. I could have held on to it, but I did sell it for a considerable profit, as you can imagine. But I'd love to have this back again, considering it was my favorite piece as a kid growing up. I think Scott Williams owns it now, because Scott Williams owns everything. The anchor, Scott Williams. So yeah, this hurts not having it, but I do have the poster right up there, the actual poster that that this was, painted for. I do have the poster, and the poster in itself is like $100 because it's hard to find. But anyway, so that's my number one favorite Wrightson image right there, and that's hard to pick because there's a whole bunch of those. Bill Weiss said, I thought every Aaron Live was a Wrightson tribute special, which is a good thing. So this has to be like the first adult coloring book. Indeed. Let's see here. Yeah, exactly. Why color it? Again, they're referring to the old witch. Again, if you don't have that coloring book, pick it up, because I don't think it's that expensive, and it's got some great stuff in it. Paul Taylor says, comics look better in color. They do for the most part, because that's how they're designed. But if you get something like we were talking about earlier with the Warren magazine stuff, where you're going outrageous with the line work and stuff, and sometimes that line work gets covered up, and that's kind of cool. Let's see, they're talking about the old witch thing again. Stonework, the depth, awesome. He's talking about the Wrightson piece in the graveyard. Christina Lynn saying it looks like a wood engraving, which is the interesting thing, because Franklin Booth, who inspired this style, was a turn of the century illustrator, and he was looking at what he thought were pen and ink drawings by like Gustave Doré and other people, and they were actually wood engravings. And so he copied that wood engraving style with a pen because he didn't know any better, and so created this sort of that wood engraving style with pen and ink, versus where Wrightson got this style from. Henry Jeremick, he likes Wrightson zombie bursting out of the grave. A lot of that is the newer Wrightson stuff, which I'm not as fond of, but I know you guys are younger, so you have more of your exposure is to the later Wrightson stuff as opposed to the earlier Wrightson stuff, which is what was mostly my inspiration. Yeah, I got a lot of those. Let's see. Why does it hurt me that you lost it? Yeah, I know. There's Dawn. Hey, Dawn. Dawn reminds me, I've got to go back and do, maybe next week I'll start doing the Creators Corner again, because I know a lot of guys, I think Dawn's one of them, that contacted Shelley about getting on the show to do a little promotion of their stuff. So once I get through with Wraith of God and I can actually start planning my shows a little bit farther ahead, I'll try and get some of you guys on to do that stuff. Let's see here. Yeah, let's see. Marcus Killigrew says, I remember hearing about the Frankenstein book when I was working in a bookstore and was able to order one. Yeah, it's funny back then. It was like this stuff just showed up and you had no idea. I want to get back to the portfolios, but with the Frankenstein portfolios, which leads us then into the Frankenstein book. About the time that I don't know. I didn't even know this came out. Okay, this is the first. This is the illustrated envelope that the Wrightson, the first Frankenstein portfolio, came out in, and there was 6 prints in there. As you can see, they did 1,000 copies, signed and numbered. Okay, this ended up being used as the title page in the book, and I didn't even know this existed. Okay, so I go to a convention, right, and a lot of the, well, I don't know so much in this one. You can see what a great piece this is. But I was going to say some of the prints in this weren't used in the book, but I think that's more in the second portfolio than this portfolio. I go to a comic book show and I see this. And this was kind of the first time I realized something was going on with Frankenstein. I saw this Frankenstein portfolio and I found out that this was not the first Frankenstein portfolio, but this was the second Frankenstein portfolio, which of course meant that there had to be a first one that I now had to find. So this came out in 78, so I was 14. One of the first comic shows I went to at the in Portland, the Masonic Temple, which I talked about this before. It was this old archaic building, and it had kind of it had the bottom ballroom floor. Then it had an upper floor that was just kind of a what do you call it? Balcony, but it had it wrapped around the whole floor and had like a railing up there, and there was like dealers set up there, and then there was dealers set up on the main floor. And that's where I saw this for the first time. And it was $20. These were $20 a piece, 6 black and white plates, signed and numbered by Wrightson, and limited to 2,000. Now, the first one was only 1,000 copies, so it was already a collector's item and expensive and hard to find, but I did track one down eventually. So then I got the first 2. Then I came across, at another show, I came across this, completely unaware that he'd ever done a third portfolio, because this third portfolio, I believe, was done by a French publisher. So it was never sold directly in the United States until after the fact. As a kind of second-hand market, it made it to the United States. And this was interesting because it didn't come in the envelope. It had a folder that this was printed on and signed and numbered, and then the prints were tucked into this folder, like a peachy folder. Remember those? Except this big white folder, of course, with this artwork on it. And so he did 3 Frankenstein portfolios. Now, the reason he did these was because he originally intended to publish the Frankenstein book himself. He had his own little publishing company named Tyrannosaurus Press, right? That was his business name. And they were going to publish the Frankenstein book himself under this banner. And so he was raising money to do this by selling these portfolios. Well, unfortunately, he was unable to do it himself. Financially, was unable to do it himself. Too bad there wasn't crowdfunding back in the day, right? So, of all the strange bedfellows, this ends up going to Marvel Comics, and Marvel published this as first a hardcover, which is what I got, and then later as a paperback. Okay. Now I still have my one that I got in. I want to say this came out in 81 or 82. I was in high school. I don't think it was 1980. We're about to find out. Let me go ahead and switch cameras one more time so we can take a closer look at this book. Most everybody has this book, I would imagine, at this point, but maybe there's some people that don't. So this is, as you can see, the wraparound cover that people have referenced. Look at this lab. I mean, it's just freaking incredible, this piece. Now, I've seen the original piece to this, and it's huge. I mean, it's huge. I don't know. It was huge. And I want to say it sold for, I saw it, someone carrying it around at San Diego, just bought it. And it was all sort of speculation that it was a movie guy that bought it, like, who's the director of Shawshank Redemption. He's a big Wrightson fan. I don't know if he bought it or someone else did, but this had gone for about, at the time, again, this was like 20 years ago, right? So it was like $120,000. This is probably go for $1 million now. Someone sold it. Anyway, it was $14.95 because you got this book for. Stephen King did an introduction. Oh, that's the end of the book. Oh. Where's the copyright on this? 83. So I was 19 when this finally came out. So he finished doing the illustrations in 1978 and didn't come out till 83. So he was trying to publish it himself. But he went to Marvel, and Marvel published it through Dodd Mead and Company in New York. You can see I got my Berni Wrightson signature right there. I was at a panel in San Diego. I brought this book with me and had him sign it in the late 80s. But anyway, there's, it's basically text with a drawing every 4 or 5 pages. And it's just kind of remarkable. And this is the best printing that this book received. It's been reprinted and reprinted and reprinted, and I have several of the reprints, but this is the best print job, is this version. Now, this is this book is over $100, depending on the condition, but there are reprints of it. So it's not like you can't get it if you don't have it. Now, there's a couple things associated with Frankenstein here. This book came out called The Lost Frankenstein Pages. This freaking book is like $200 or $300. It's so rare. But it has like a lot of the Frankenstein art that wasn't used in the book. And but it also has artwork that was. Now this piece right here, this was also in that coloring book. Can you imagine? That's a piece in that coloring book. So again, if you don't have that coloring book, get it. So this is a really cool book. Is this Apple somebody? I can't remember who published this. But so this is cool to have if you got it. But like I said, it's super expensive now. And a couple other things I wanted to show you guys that I forgot were these 2 comic art convention magazines these were in New York, right? And so Wrightson was a guest of honor in '77, and there's a nice little article in here by him. I believe this artwork was done specifically for the convention book. So it was done in '77, so it's not from the Swamp Thing book, because he finished that in '73 or '74 at the latest. So anyway, this is kind of cool. It's got a nice interview in there by Wrightson, a little bit of artwork, not much. And then of course in '78, where they had the whole studio was there. Jones, Kaluta, Smith, and Wrightson. And this also has another interview in it. And these aren't that expensive to get your hands on, but they're kind of cool. So anyway, oh, you know what? And while I've got you here, since we're into Frankenstein right now, and I've got some scans of the stuff I'll show. I'm not going to flip open this book and flip through the book because you'll be able to see some of the artwork on the scans better than I would show it here. All right, so this is the retrospective I was talking about that came out in 1979, right? This is Berni Wrightson look back. Now it came out, this is another wraparound cover. It's awfully dark on the back there. Okay. And this was released as a print as well. But this was, I found this book in the an ad for this book in the Buyer's Guide for Comic Fandom, which was the weekly newspaper. Okay. And you could get the signed and numbered limited edition copy of this for $125 at the time. Now it's like $1,000, I think. So I bought it and had it when I was a kid, whenever this came out. So I would have been 15 years old, 79. Yeah, I'd have been 14 or 15. And I got to tell you, it was almost like crowdfunding because they were ordering. You could order this book before it was published, right? So he was soliciting orders on this book before it was published, so he could take the money and help pay for the publishing of the book. So it was a long wait from when I bought it to when I actually got it, but I did get it. And I sold it like a dick that I am. And so I had to buy this again I got a great deal on this, less than $200, signed by Wrightson. Now, this isn't the limited edition one, because the limited edition one had an extra color plate of a vampire pulling a stake out of his chest right here, glued into the front of the book. But this thing, it's got everything in it. And there's a paperback of this, and which in some regards is as it can be as expensive as the hardcover. But it's got like all of his DC work, not all of it, but the best of his DC work, some of his early stuff. Just rando type illustrations. Like this was that Texas Chainsaw Massacre illustration is fantastic because it's it was like the cover to some horror convention guide, that you would never have maybe even known about. House of Mystery paperback cover. Jack Olick wrote like novelizations, I guess you'd call them, short stories. There's House of Mystery stories, and Wrightson did the covers for the paperbacks and the illustrations on the inside, which I have those as well. There's some early nudie stuff that kind of looks Frazetta influenced. There's the coloring book. Okay, now here's, like I told you, some of the images in the coloring book that he actually hand colored. It's kind of dark. Sorry, but that's a vampire one. The Blob. This is Ghoul eating out of the grave. Mummy, werewolf. These are all in the coloring book. The alien dude. Cyclops. He hadn't colored that one. The axe murderer. Then this chick getting attacked by a plant monster. Actually, it has every zombie. This one I'm not a big fan of. I just, it doesn't really do much for me. I don't think it's a great piece. That's like the only one. There's zombies. Frankenstein piece I told you about. Swamp Thing type piece. The Old Witch. So yeah, those are all images in that book. There's a whole chapter in here on Warren. Then of course there's a whole chapter on Frankenstein. Check this out. This page right here, I saw this page at San Diego. And this is only half the page. It's like twice up. There's another set of panels down here that for some reason it doesn't show, and I don't know why. But these four right here, close-ups of the monster, are incredible. And that someone had this for $4,000, and I didn't have $4,000, so I didn't get it. But I saw it. And so there's some of his movie stuff in here. I mean, it's a retrospective, right? There's the dinosaur stuff that was alluded to earlier. These were a series of posters he did. These are all, you can find these posters on eBay. There's little stuff about the studio in here and stuff he did on the studio. Anyway, there's a little bit of Frankenstein and a little bit of Captain Stern in here, because those are stuff that this book came out in 79, so I got to assume that they probably wrapped it up in 1978. So he was still, Frankenstein was still sort of a fresh thing at the time, so there wasn't a lot of that material to be put in there. So it makes you kind of think, well, geez, I should have waited till he was done with the Frankenstein book before they did that retrospective. But anyway, it's a great book to have. Okay. Ferris Comics 10, just ordered Wraith of God 1 and 2 with roughs. In my 50s and working on my dream of making comics, get the roughs to study. Starting kind of late in life to get better at drawing it. Ferris, first of all, thank you so much for the $10. Secondly, thank you for backing the campaign. Thirdly, it's never too late, Ben. You can get, whether you ever reach a level of, professional or getting your book published or whatever, it's just the joy of drawing and creating stuff. It's unmatched. And again, for the Comic Books Broke Me crowd, it's not about the money. It's about the joy and the pursuit of excellence. And I know I sound like I'm being sarcastic, but I'm actually being truthful. There you go, Frank Darabont. I think you may be right. Got yours signed by Wrightson in 2000. Again, there we go, Frank Darabont. Thank you, guys. Pastmaster Dances got his first open heart surgery in '83. I think you're joking. Mark Skiller, 83, you're a senior in high school. 82, I was a senior in high school, so you were right on my tail, man. Leg Kick, $2. Thank you so much, Leg Kick. I just wanted to give you a super chat. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yep. Richard Lopresti, that's me. Yeah. I crushed that way on Adams too. Thought I saw a Hulk cover there. Yeah, well, he did a Man-Thing cover where Hulk guest starred on. It was, I think it's, I'm sorry, it's a Hulk cover that Man-Thing guest starred in, which I think is 197. That's pretty cool. Yeah, he says, I have a signed copy as well. It's a little beat up since the multiple viewings. That's the thing. You get these really expensive books because they had such low print runs, but they're so cool. You just want to read them, and you read them to death, and they fall apart. And then someone says, "Oh, you know that's worth $1,000." You go, "Well, not anymore." $300 on Amazon. If you go to Stuart Ng Books, that's NG, Stuart NG Books. He has several copies at various price ranges depending on the condition. And I think he has one for two something. I got that one for, I couldn't believe it was like $175 or less on eBay. It just came up and I was like, I can't pass that up. So past Master Danson, Stern was in heavy metal, correct? You are correct, sir, and we're going to get to that in just a moment. He says he wasn't joking about the open heart surgery. Had 3 open hearts. Jeez, man. Glad you're still with us. Takes like a Timex. Paul Taylor's correct. It's better to be a reader than a collector. I wouldn't eat my comics like Ethan does, but I don't worry about resale value either. I can't help it. It's just hardwired in me. Once I discovered the price guide in 1976 when I was 12, I was like, these things are worth money. And then I never sell them, or hardly ever. I do occasionally, but I can't help it. I'm just so is it anal retentive? I hate to use that phrase, but about, my books getting bent, anything, I just, I guess I have issues. Okay, let's take a look at some of my favorite pieces out of the Frankenstein book. And this is kind of interesting because all these have something similar, and you'll see in a moment. And it's the composition. Okay, so you have the Frankenstein monster going through the woods in this snow-covered area. I mean, look at all that negative space. It's a brilliant layout and design and execution, right? And check out this one. Well, this one's doesn't fit into the same category. I'll save this for last. Now, this one didn't make it into the book, which I don't understand. But this was in the second portfolio. Look at that. Again, you have this your image focal point is right here, but you have all this, I wouldn't call it dead space like the other one, but you have all this detail and stuff leading up. And it's this black area right here that kind of draws your eye up here. It's just tremendous. But the composition, again, all your action is right at the top of the frame. These leaves coming down over the top of. Now, here's something really bizarre. Check this out. There's a window right down here. Okay. That means this is on top of a structure. So if he's digging down, he must have dug through the roof and that doesn't make much sense. But anyway, besides, maybe that's why he didn't use it. He's like, wait a minute, that couldn't be a window there. But it's still a tremendous piece. Okay. Now again, look at this. Your focal point is right here, the ship caught in the ice flow, right? And you get this great, sun coming through the clouds kind of thing, everything else in shadow. But again, your focal point right up here near the top is small. You've got all this extra area around it sort of leading up to this. It's just a great composition and design. Most of us would just like go closer in on the boat or something. Instead, you know, he takes this really long shot and turns it into a really interesting composition. It's also the slant here. And again, look at this one. Your focal point again is right, small Frankenstein monster sitting around a fire. You've got this foreground element to create depth. Look at this shadow and look at all the detail on the rocks back here. And then this cloud of smoke. It's just so wonderful. But again, there's your focus right there, that little tiny image with all this great stuff around it. Yeah. I would have gone insane drawing that. I know. It's just you have to be so patient. That's driving me nuts. But if you're not on a deadline, it's easier to be patient. But then who says he wasn't starving to death while he's working on this stuff either and going, geez, I need to get something done, make some money. Here's the last one I'll show you right here. Again, same type of thing. Small, it's all black, so she doesn't get lost in the snow. Your eye is drawn right down. Your eye is drawn right down here. But look at all this negative space, how he uses that white, the snow, to just incredible. But there's a lot of illustrations in the book. I mean, there's a lot of big illustrations of the monster and stuff, but there's a lot of these where you have, you know, all this environment surrounding the main subject. And that main subject is small and off-centered up in the corner and wherever, and all this stuff going around. It's fantastic. The amount of thought, and you wonder, was this just instinctive, or did he really spend hours laboring over these layouts, or did he just go, hey, this would be great if I do this? And probably was that easy for him. The other one I want to show you is another piece that didn't make it. Oh, dang it, this is small. Sorry. It didn't make it in the book. I believe he said because he felt it revealed too much. Like the process of how he made the monster too early or something. But this is a great piece. I think this has been turned into a print as well. This isn't a good scan, I apologize. But you'll find this in the Lost Frankenstein pages, and I believe you can buy this as a print too. Because that's what I had it as, was a print. It's just the detail and to conceptualize all this lab equipment and stuff. It's just freaking amazing. It's incredible. So if I haven't sold you on the Frankenstein book by now, I don't know what I can do. But that leads me to this. Before we get to our cryptids, oh yeah, I've got cryptids. This issue of Heavy Metal, June 1980. In my opinion, this is the end of the great Wrightson era, the sweet spot of 1972 to 1980. This is, I'm not saying it's the last good thing he did, but I'm saying it's the last great thing he did, in my opinion. And I just wonder if, after the Frankenstein book, I mean, drawing that book would have just killed most people. And I wonder if it was just like he spent so much energy on that book, it just like art became, you know, what can I do to make money? Because after Frankenstein, he did Creepshow, which was okay, but not great in terms of what we'd seen in previous years. And then Cycle of the Werewolf, same thing. I was actually disappointed as a teenager buying those because I didn't feel that they were up to his standards of what he had done before. And then he kind of disappeared and was doing a lot of movie work and stuff like that. Then he came back later in the later 80s to do like some Batman projects and the Punisher POV, and a few other comic book projects, which I always find interesting because it's like no matter how hard you try to get out of comics, you always end up back in comics because as little money as you make in comics, it's still better than some of the money you make doing trying to do your own thing, you know. Again, if these guys had crowdfunding, it might have been a different story back in the day, but they didn't. So they had to like produce stuff and then try and sell it, you know, and reach an audience where you didn't have the internet either. So it was a lot harder to reach a big buying audience. Like I said, I was a Wrightson honk and I had no idea there was even Frankenstein portfolios until after they'd already been out. So anyway, this is the Captain Stern story. And the one that was, you know, they used to for the heavy metal movie. And he wrote this, penciled it, inked it, and colored it with watercolors. And I love this story. It's just the artwork in it is tremendous. And it's just like, again, this was published in 1980. I don't know when it was drawn. Maybe it might have been drawn in 79. I have no idea. And this was, for my money, this was the last great Wrightson story, art-wise. And I never would have said that while he was alive, but I guess I can say it now. And no offense to him, because I think he's one of the greatest artists in this field that ever lived. But I just think there's a vast difference between what he did post 1980 to what he did between 72 and 80. But check this out. That's in the June 1980 issue of Heavy Metal. And so anyway, that's where we end on Wrightson. Art of Roy. He's got a horror story too. He says, I regret to this day not parting with $700 Bernie was asking for a small published piece he tried selling me. Yeah, boy. Yes, sir, that is Captain Stern. Thank you, Blue Boy. Appreciate it. Well, it's nice to kind of do an in-depth dive once in a while on a really good artist and take a look at some of their stuff. And, you know, it's hard to say what I didn't know him well. You know, guys like Simonson and Chaikin knew him well. Like I said, I had the good fortune of meeting him 5 times. Had dinner with him once and was able to talk with him a lot about his art. And sat next to him at a convention one time and pissed him off because he was doing a sketch. It was a surprise sketch for somebody, and I was looking at it upside down. And he started by doing what appeared to be kind of a bat shape, and I realized he was doing the brow for Frankenstein, the Frankenstein monster, and I just blurted it out. I was so proud of myself, and I realized he was pissed because I ruined the surprise for the guy that was waiting for it. So what are you gonna do? But he never, like I said, he never remembered me. The next time I would meet him, it would be like all fresh and new again. So I don't know that he, you know, sat around going, Lopresti, that jerk. Anyway, this is true. To be fair, in the 70s and 80s, 700 was a lot of money. My dad bought a car for $7,000 back then. Last time vehicles sold for a fair price. My dad paid $500 for my first car, which was a '68 Pontiac Le Mans. So yeah, you sit there and think, but even in the 90s, before things really exploded, you could get this guy's work and other people's work, Kirby's work, for practically nothing, relatively speaking to what it's going for today. But at the time, it was like, you know, $4,000 might have been $4 million to me because I just didn't have it. But boy, I wish I had. I could have got EC pages, Graham Ingalls pages with the old witch on them, like half-page splashes where they're introducing the story for $500. And I didn't have it. So, wham. Yeah, there he goes. The mid-90s at Dragon Con. But see, stuff was still affordable in the 90s. It was, stuff blew up after that. So that's right, 68 Le Mans. It was a classic, baby. It was a chick magnet. Yeah. Okay, so, oh, there is something else I wanted to share with you guys. Two things, actually, before we wrap up. One of them is our precious moments, because it is relevant. If I can find it. What do I do with it? There it is. This is our precious moments from yesteryear for this week. Take a look at this. That, of course, is from Frankenstein from 1931, which I believe is Wrightson's favorite movie, if not one of his favorite movies for sure. It's the first time the Frankenstein monster is revealed to the audience. So the problem I have with this scene is he backs his way in, which is ridiculous. And then there's no music. But of course, it was 1931. They were just doing talkies. And it's like, as soon as they started having people's, talkies with voices, they forgot about music. It seemed like a couple of years, and they finally figured out, oh yeah, music helps too. So if you can imagine, why not light that scene so that the monster is completely in shadow when the door opens? So maybe you can see the silhouette of him, but you can't see his face. And then he walks into the room and then hits the light and we can see him. Why wouldn't you do it that way? Why would you have him walk in backwards? It made no sense to me. And then some dramatic music there as his face comes into the light. But I guess people were screaming and fainting in the theaters anyway, so I guess it worked at the time. But looking back on it, I would love to have seen it done a little bit more cleverly than they did. Thank you, Frank says Frankenstein came out in 31. Is that pre-code? I believe it is. That's true. In fact, I was watching a trailer for that. You see that new horror movie with a nun or something? I think it's called The Nun. And the guy I was with, we sat there after the preview. He goes, I can't tell if that movie's scary or the music is just making it scary, which is true. I mean, the music is so effective in creating emotion in film. And it amazes me that it took them so long to figure that out, because they used music all through the silent movies. They played it live in the theaters because obviously it was important. And then to totally forget that because, we're so enamored with, we can actually have sync sound talkies, that they didn't use music at all. Very strange. But anyway, you know what else is strange? Cryptids. Cryptids are strange and bizarre. And that's why we like to uncover the mystery of cryptids on this show with our favorite segment. It's time, ladies and gentlemen, to look at some really ridiculous crap, because that's what I'm here for, is ridiculous crap. Okay, this first one is not a cryptid video, but it's a fun video, and I thought it was worth showing because of we have some dogs in a little bit of a predicament here. Let's take a look and see what kind of trouble these fellers are getting themselves into. Something's coming. Oh, what is it? Now, I love how they cut out and didn't show you, and then they replay it again. Here it is. Look at that. That's either an alligator or a caiman. I read someplace that caimans can get like as big as alligators, like 13, which I didn't realize, 13, 15 feet long. Crazy. So anyway, there's our buddy, the alligator. Jumps into screen there. He's probably only like, with a tail, maybe 7 feet long. Not a big one, but it's not messing with those dogs. Anyway, I thought that was kind of fun. Take another quick look here at the. Then the other one comes flying and is like, "Get out of here, man! The guy's gonna eat us alive." So anyway, there you go. That's actually real, I believe, with all my heart. That's Okay, Past Master Dan says caimans have a sharp snout. So what are you telling me? Was that a caiman or was that an alligator? Because I wasn't paying attention. Again, Kelsey's a Bigfoot. No, they are. That's what I thought too. But they can get in the right region. They can get as big as alligators, which is nuts. I had no idea. Isn't Rona fake? Oh, thank you, Frankie. Not real. Okay. Well, all right. Well, tell me what you think about this. Oh, you guys, I forgot to show you one Frankenstein piece. So I'm backtracking real quick. Take a look at this. This is another example of what I'm talking about with, you know, the focal point being down at the bottom of the panel and all this stuff coming down. I love this piece. And just the acting, the monster's despair as he's by the brook of the water. Someone, that's on Heritage. Someone was selling this guy. What do you think this went for? Someone told me that the Frankenstein pieces, the finished ones, go for over $100,000 each. Crazy. Anyway, okay, so now we're back to the cryptid. Sorry, I saw that up there. Wait a minute, I didn't share that. Cool. Okay. I can't, I'm not going to do the sound on this, but I'll tell you after you see it what the sound was. All right, here we go. Here's we have a Bigfoot sighting apparently. So let's take a look, see what we can see here. It looks like one of those things on stilts from the Dark Crystal, you know, the elf kids rode around on. It also looks like he has a backpack on. I think that all right, and here's the funny thing. Okay, here's the sound part that you can't hear. You can hear the clanking of the crutches or the stilts that he's walking on in the video. They didn't even doctor the sound. You can hear this clank, clank, clank. Like, seriously? Come on, you guys. I mean, visually, you kind of say, well, okay, they got the suit. They're doing it on stilts to make it look like a weird creature or something. You go, okay, you know, you want to say the A is there for effort, but then to be so stupid as to allow the crutch sounds, the metal aluminum crutch sounds to be heard while he's walking, not good. So on this video I called Bigfoot on crutches. Yeah, the backpack. It looks like he has a backpack on. It's just, you know, it's like I always say I want people to give me an A for at least put some effort into it. These guys put effort into it, but they put stupid effort into it. It's like, how could you have the sound on so that, oh, look at this video and never mind the metallic sounds of the stilts and never mind the backpack that he has on. Oh boy. There's a new show coming on Discovery about finding Bigfoot. Yeah, you let me know when they find him, Marcus. This is good. Maybe it has polio. For that extra level of fake, baby. That's what we. Oh, you know it's real because the stilt arms. Exactly. Oh my goodness. Angela Curry says it looks like walking sticks. Yep, and it sounds like it too. Stupid is as stupid does. Okay, all right. Now we're getting to the serious stuff. Now this is weird. Now this is in Mexico, and the video sucks, but it is kind of weird. And I'm not saying it's real. I'm just saying it's weird. Some sort of flying creature they caught. Okay, this video really, it gets better. I'm not even sure why this is in here. There it is. There's this flying creature, right? It looks like a bird or whatever. But then they captured it. And now here you go. There's his eye, and there's the mouth. Okay. Again, eye, mouth. It looks like a turtle head. Eye, mouth. So it's lifting its head back, but it has no beak or discernible beak. Now, is this like one of those baby birds that have feathers everywhere and you can't see the beak yet because it hasn't? I don't know. I'm not exactly sure what we're looking at here. I think it's real. I just don't know what it is. I'm wondering if it's a bird that just hasn't lost its feathers yet. Danky Frankie says CIA hybrid breeding program. They're making giant ones big enough to crush a city. Blue Boy says, Aaron, this isn't species of owl. It's shaped weird. Mostly, it's a species of owl, or it isn't? Oh, it's an owl. Okay. Okay. I knew there was some logical explanation. That's what I figured. Is it must be that maybe the feathers were still covering up the. Interesting. Okay, so that's a species of owl. Marcus Killigrew says it's a feathered snapping turtle. Could be. It looks like a turtle. Blue Boy is no. This is a species of owl. He's completely convinced. And so Citizen Ronan saying it's a baby dragon, of course. That must be wrong. Baby Rodan, no. That's a bat with a potato cam. It's an owl. That's what they're saying. It's Blue Boy saying this is an owl. Okay. Paul Taylor is a biologist. Paul Taylor's a biologist, and he says it's a feathered snapping turtle of death. So he may be onto something there. Baby dragon, beak missing from a fight, perhaps. Interesting. All right, we have a lot of answers there, but I think people are somehow have figured out that it's real, whatever it is. Okay, now I've saved the worst for last. Well, I'm just going to show it to you. Yeah, you can tell me. All right. Now, as you'll notice in the foreground here, we have a beaver. Something walks behind it, right? This beaver is not moving. See the hands there in slow-mo? Now they cut away to show you what, say if they caught some wildlife in focus, what it might look like. Here we go again. Now check out the hands right here. Look at those big old claw hands. Now, I'd like you to notice that the bushes where he's walking through do not move at all. And the beaver doesn't move at all either. He's not reacting to anything there. This is fake beaver, says Stanky Frankie. I'm telling you, no, it's not. That's fake too, but let's not get into that right now. My gut reaction here is this was put in some video program. Look at the bush, the shrubs are not moving at all. So it had to be put in after the fact. And the fact the beaver's not reacting, these bears, they just can't believe it. Byron Games is saying that beaver is frozen with fear. That's the problem. The mighty Durf lost his mom in the woods. It may be her. Romy saying, that's an old film trick. You're not fooling anybody, Aaron. I'm not trying to fool anybody. So Kirialt Einan. So Kirialt, it says maybe it's really careful. It just doesn't want to make the bushes move. A lot of these videos I'll say, well, but I don't know. This is so, to me, this is so fake. It's ridiculous. I'm not even going to give him an A for effort. If he'd made the bushes move, then I would give him a little more credit for this. I do like the big hairy paws, though. Maybe it's a giant sloth. Art of Roy says, now my friend can do that. It's double exposure. There you go. The old film trick of double exposure. That's some King Kong stuff right there. The species of owl, I believe, is a bird named ghost bird. It has a unique wide set, wide beak. Mouth looks identical in Google Pics to your video. I'm going to check that out. Ghost bird. There you go. Check it out. Creative Face says photo manipulation for screensaver. Okay. Well. Mighty Durf says, wait, it's the Ghost of Malibu Comics and it escaped the Disney Vault. Angela, I'm not giving him an A for effort because they didn't make the bushes move. If they made the bushes move, I would have given him an A for effort, but no. Yeah, totally fake. Missy, my dog, who barks, and I had to lock him out. Now he's scratching at my door going, let me in. No, I'm not going to. All right, gang, that's pretty much all I got for you today. We went actually long, almost 3 hours tonight. Wow, it's epic for me. And most of you stuck around for the show. That's great. That was our Wrightson Tribute episode. Glad you guys came in and enjoyed it, or at least came in. I hope you enjoyed it, at least some of it. Because me, I enjoy talking about comics, I enjoy talking about art, and I enjoy talking about Wrightson. So we'll see. Maybe we'll do Frazetta. We'll start doing Frazetta next week now that we've reached the pinnacle of Wrightson. I don't know what else I can show you. But thank you guys for joining me. We couldn't do the show without you. Hopefully Shelley will be back next week. I want to thank you guys all for the super chats. I don't think I missed any. I'm double checking right now. I did not. Thank you guys for that. Appreciate you joining in the conversation. Make sure you check out Graybeard Studio on Wednesdays at 1 o'clock right here on this channel, Pacific time. We'll be launching Gary's Brush with Destiny book as well as drawing. Tuesdays, the Professionals, not sure who's hosting. Graham, maybe? Not sure. And of course, Comics Kings on Monday. Maybe I'll be there, maybe I won't. Got to finish Kit Carter. And I'm going to finish that as soon as I get offline here. So thanks again, everybody. Appreciate you so much. And back Wraith of God if you haven't. Hit the like and subscribe if you haven't done that. And we'll see you next time right here on Aaron Live.